please raise your hand. Let some of the folks know if they want to get a seat in there. Thank you for joining us. Planning Commission meeting, December 1st, 2025. Time of the meeting opening is 4:05 p.m. If you could take a minute, go around, start with Elizabeth. Introduce yourselves.
Elizabeth Edwardson, Associate Planner.
Kyle Kearns, Director of Community Development.
Ryan Austin, District 1 Alderman and Commission Member.
Jeff Marutz, Commission Member.
Steve Sheffrell, Commission Member.
Katie Bailey, Commission Member.
Matt Zacher, Mayor and Commission Chair.
Michael Tim, District 7 Alderman.
Jeff Benscover, District 4 Alderman.
Dean Veneman, District 2 Alderman.
Dennis Pollock, 6th Ward Alderman.
Todd Weiler, General Manager, Water and Light.
Eric Udelhoffen with One Energy Renewables.
And I'm Stanley Minnick with One Energy Renewables.
All right, thank you, everybody. Item 1, approval of the report from October 6, 2025 Planning Commission meeting. Commission, what are your wishes?
Motion to approve.
I got a motion by Austin,
I'll second.
second by Marutz. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, go ahead and cast your votes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, 5-0.
Mr. Mayor, I'm online as well. Eric Donovan, I vote yay.
All right, thanks, Eric. Appreciate you joining us. Ayes have it, 6-0. Item 2, public hearing and action on a request from the City of Wisconsin Rapids Water Works and Lighting Commission to rezone 2211 Whitrock Avenue, parcel ID 3414515 and 2520 2 Mile Avenue, parcel ID 3414520 from a R2 mixed residential zoning district to a C1 conservancy zoning district for the purpose of constructing a solar power plant. All right, this is why we're all here. I just want to take a few moments to, okay. Okay, so there's a couple of things that happen here. I just want to get everybody on the same page so you know what's happening and why it's happening. First, I start out by saying I take full responsibility for things getting a little bit confused here. I have known about the desires or goals for talking about a solar plant for quite a while, but in the end, we were talking about it. As it got to this point last month, it moved forward and came up on the Planning Commission. And when it came up on there, we had a lot of calls in and a lot of people calling and talking and letting us know social media wise that people wanted more information and they had strong opinions about it both ways. So I made the executive decision at that time to delay the planning meeting for another month. And then we opened up our website and tried to get as much information out to everybody as we could. So we didn't feel like it was being rushed through or anything like that. Again, I say this isn't trying to be rushed through. Ultimately, it was just the way things worked out. So please understand that that's not our intention, and we're slowing it down as much as we can. And then we also have to get it on track. So after we kind of set this up for this planning meeting, commission meeting, I talked with our attorney, Sue Schill, and kind of got the understanding that there was some confusion because WWLC is a department of Wisconsin Rapids, but it also has its own ordinance that sets it up as a separate entity so it can compete strongly with other electric companies. So they stand very autonomous and do their, most of their in-house decision-making with their commission. And in that, they do a good job making those decisions and building a good company for us to have as our electric and water company. But in the end, it still has to come to the council when it comes to decision-making, such as the property that's owned cannot be owned by a department. It's actually owned by the city. So therefore, this should have come through the Property and Finance Committee meeting, which is actually going to be tomorrow first before it came to this Planning Commission meeting. But at the same time, I didn't want to cancel another Planning Commission meeting because then I felt like that would have caused more concern and maybe a little more uproar or something along those lines. So the way this plays out right now is I'm going to ask the Planning Commission to listen to Todd and to One Energy and Kyle from the Community Development Department, and then listen to the community tonight at the public hearing. But we're we're not going to take action on any of the stuff with the solar plant tonight. It will go to the Planning and Finance Committee tomorrow. And they actually have to decide as the council, as a city, if we're moving forward with this project as a solar power plant or if something else is going to be brought up at that time. If they pass it forward, it would go to the council at the third Tuesday of the month. And at the same time, if it does pass through the Property and Finance Committee, then we would look at setting up a special planning commission meeting so that we can have another conversation about the zoning before that meeting. If they don't pass it through the committee meeting, then the council could bring it back out again and talk about it as a full council, and we'll decide at there if it would move forward. And then if it moves forward, we'd set it up for the zoning conversation to happen next month in January to talk more about the rezoning. So for all that confusion, I apologize, but that is the way we're going to move forward. I hope everybody understood me. The way we're going to move forward tonight, I said my information here. I'll have Kyle talk real quick, and then we'll open it up to Todd from WWLC to talk more about what's happening, and he's going to open it up to Eric and Stanley from One Energy, and then we'll open it up to the public hearing, and then we'll talk with the commission as to about questions that they have to get more clarity. We will be then talking about a second item 3, which is the same thing. We'll have to open it up to the public hearing because it's on the agenda, so I have to do it. But at the same time, anybody wishing to speak about this solar project in its entirety, we'll try to do that during the first public hearing. Again, I'll open up the second one, but if we're done talking at that point, we don't necessarily have to talk again about the same issues. So that's kind of my hope. I will give everybody, some time to say their piece, but I'll cut it off at around 3 minutes. That way we can also make it out of here at a decent hour. But again, you're the public and we're here to listen. So I appreciate it. Kyle, did you have any words?
No, I think I'll get into my point after the presentation by the applicant.
Sounds good. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Todd, go ahead.
All right, well, thank you everybody for coming and listening. I'm Todd Weiler, as I had said. Just a couple things about myself. For those that don't know me, I have lived in the area my entire life. I raised my family here in Wisconsin Rapids. But probably more importantly is I've been a customer of Water and Light for the last 35 years. So I have to pay that same monthly electric bill like everybody else. And so the reason that we're talking about this project tonight is for our customers, because it is a benefit for the customers, hopefully that they won't have to pay as much in the future as they would if we did not do the project. So please advance the slide. So for the agenda, like we already said, I will do a presentation and then One Energy will. We can then open it up to the audience. I wanted to point out that I did leave some blank index cards with some pens on the open table there when you walked here. Everybody's, or some of us, it's not easy to come up and speak in public. If you want me to just call you personally to talk about the project, I'm happy to do that. So if you leave me your phone number and your name and maybe a brief question, I'll be happy to call you back. Matt, if you can advance. So how did we get here? So I need to back up in time a little bit to explain this to everyone. So Wisconsin Rapids does not generate any of its own electricity. And what happened 25 years ago is we realized that when you go out to purchase this electricity on the market, you can get a much better price if you do it as a group. So buying larger quantities gets you better pricing. And so Great Lakes Utilities was formed, and Wisconsin Rapids was one of the founding members. And there are currently 13 municipalities in the state that make up Great Lakes Utilities. Right now, as I'll get to in the next slides, Great Lakes Utilities would like to install solar in their communities' territories. And the reason for that is because in the last 25 years, the prices on the market for the power have been advantageous for us to purchase. And that shows in our rates. If you look at our residential rates, our rates are in the bottom third of the state compared to all the other electric utilities. And if you look at the larger utilities that border us, we're doing much better than them. And so that's the good news, that right now our rates are down. So now if we go to the next slide, I'll tell you the bad news. So here's a graph, and the graph's gray line is actual usage of electricity in the MISO footprint, they call it, and that's what we belong to. Now, you can see how that gray line drooped during COVID, but it relatively grew, but at a very slow rate. So then what happens is you have professionals that forecast, well, what's going to change in the future? And back in the year 2022, they looked at industrial growth and the fact that people were buying electric vehicles, and they said, your electric usage is going to start rising much faster than it actually has in the past. And that's the blue line up on the screen. But then what happened in December of 2024 is they completely changed their forecast and they projected the red line. And what's driving that red line? It's the data centers that you keep hearing about. So back in the year 2021, there were 2,600 data centers in the United States. In the year 2025, there were over 5,000. And by the year 2030, there's projected to be over 7,500. Those are the big users of electricity, and that's what's driving this forecast. And this is a very scary forecast. We've never seen this before in the history of the United States. And so, as everybody knows, when your demand starts exceeding your supply, the prices start going up. So all of the consultants that Great Lakes Utilities uses are telling us that if we keep our same pattern and we go out on the market and we buy the electricity for our customers, you are going to see increases much higher than we've ever seen in the past. So we go back to those experts and we say, what can we do about that? And their answer is that if Great Lakes Utilities could actually build its own generation at today's prices, then we could lock in those prices for the future. And so that's why this whole project is coming into fruition and we're discussing it. It's to try to keep our prices down for all of our customers in our 13 communities. And you might ask, well, why are we looking at solar? Well, the reason for solar is, that's the first one that we're looking at, is it's the easiest to build. It's less than 2 years from the time of, beginning of it to actually completion. But probably even more important right now, and as the mayor said, it sounds like on a timeline that we're pushing this forward so quickly that nobody has a chance to really know what's going on, is what's happening is your federal tax credit incentives go away in 2027. And like I said, if it takes 2 years to build, if you don't start working on this very quickly, we lose out on the tax incentives, and all at once the project itself starts not becoming that attractive anymore. So that's why this is happening at the pace that it's happening at. It's not to try to get something past people, but it's to make people aware that this is what we're doing and this is what has to happen. And is this what Wisconsin Rapids wants? And when I say, lower costs on your power bill, that's probably what most of the customers that I talk to me about. So Matt, if you could go forward. So a lot of the questions online that were asked, and I read all through the comments, there's like, well, what is this costing us? Am I the one that has to pay for this? And I want to point out that there are no tax dollars being spent on this project. The project costs come from the ratepayers, they come from our customers, but I want to point out the advantage of the finances here. So Great Lakes Utilities does not own any property, so it needs its members to host the project. So if a member wants to host a project, it wants to make it to their advantage. And so for a $100,000 initial cost by Water and Light to hook this system up to its system, we would end up saving $200,000 plus each year for the next 30 years of the project. So a $100,000 investment will gain us a $6 million return after 30 years. And that's a 60% rate of return. You don't see these type of deals happen too often in your lifetime, if ever. And so that's why we're trying to figure out, is this the right fit for us? And and decide to go forward or not. So Matt, if you want to go to the next slide. So a lot of the comments that I've heard or talked to people about is why here? And this map is one of the ways that I can type or explain that. So when we worked with One Energy to ask them about what is a 5 megawatt array, what do you need? They say we need at least 25 acres. The land has to be flat. The land has to be rectangular. But in order to cut the installation costs for the utility, the land has to be close to one of our substations that has the equipment in it that can handle this type of generation. And it has to have customer load that can absorb the power that the array is actually going to generate. But it also has to be close to one of our 3-phase power lines that is sized large enough to handle this type of generation. So we actually looked at a lot of sites, and a lot of the sites we looked at are the ones that people commented on. So one of the comments was, what about the old paper mill or the craft mill area? So that site is not owned by the city, and it actually is serviced by Consolidated Water Power Company, which is an entirely different utility. So the craft mill doesn't work for those two major reasons. Another thing that people talked about was, why not Walmart? Why not the parking lot? Why not the roof? Again, we don't own Walmart and we don't own the parking lot, but if you look at their building, their roof wouldn't be strong enough to support the weight of the solar panels. And to try to construct, foundations in the parking lot to raise this above the cars, it becomes economically not, sustainable for the project. Another thing people asked about is, why not the airport? Well, as you know, the airport has gained a lot of traffic over the last few years with the golf course opening. And so if you pick that airport land, you're looking at the FAA to come in, and they have to do a glare study, and you have to get that approval. And so the timeline starts making that look very unlikely that you could have that happen. Other people said, why not the landfill? And we looked at that as well. And the answer from One Energy is that they've tried that in the past. It does not work. So what happens over time is the weight of the panels starts sinking into the ground, and now you've got conduits and wires breaking between the inverters and the panels, and it just makes for a very bad installation, very costly installation. So we looked at this property, and this property was purchased by the utility back in 1945, so 80 years ago. And the reason that it was purchased is because the city wells, we wanted to be able to construct the city wells on the property, which we did. Now, one of the big complaints that I've talked to people about was they're saying, well, you're going to be cutting down trees. And I want to just point out that this is not virgin forest land. The trees are located on the property because the utility planted the trees on the property. They did that as a revenue source over the years, and we will harvest those trees when they become mature. And right now, on those parcels, there are a lot of trees maturing. So regardless of the project going through or not going through, we will be going in and select cutting the trees regardless of what we decide. Another comment was, well, a creek runs right through the property. The property that we're proposing does not have any creek running through it. That creek is on the 40-acre parcel just to the west of the 80 that we're talking about. So that doesn't come into play as well. What does come into play, though, is what we call a wellhead protection. And if you look at the map that's up on the screen, there's two circles. There's a larger one and then a smaller one, kind of right in the middle of that map. And that's the 80-acre parcel that we're talking about. Now, some people have said, well, why can't we use that land to develop on that land? There are a lot of restrictions that make it so that developing that land could be very detrimental to our well and contamination of our wells. And because of all of those limitations, it's not a practical place to be developing. And Kyle will tell you that the city owns other property that he would love to have somebody come and develop on. So please go talk to Kyle if that's where your interest lies. So Matt, go forward. So here's the design that One Energy laid out for us. We're trying to keep a border of trees around the entire solar array so that any property owner would not see the array. at the minimum points, it's 150 feet of trees. Another complaint that people wrote or talked about was, well, what about all the traffic? Will they come into our yards? And there's only one entrance in and out of the solar array, and we're actually using the existing entrance for one of the wells. So there will be nobody coming onto your property for this project. Another big thing about the trees being cut, people have asked about that. The reality is that, so we need to clear 25 acres of trees for the solar array, but we have to clear 42 acres of trees so that the trees don't block the sun from the array. But if you look at One Energy and their past projects, the first thing that they'll tell you is they try to work with the community because they want a positive image. And you can either select having the land become grass and have sheep graze on it, or you can have the land planted in pollinators. And we would pick planting it in pollinators. There's big benefits for planting it in pollinators, and I asked them about, will our sandy soil be able to accommodate that? And the pollinators that they would plant actually thrive better in the sandy soil, and sandy soil is actually worse for weeds, so you have less weeds that come up during the process of trying to establish the pollinators. Pollinators actually also have a filtration system, a root system that's much better than a pine trees. Pine trees actually give off tannins and are not a great fit to have above your wells. So the pollinators that we would plant would actually make a better habitat for your wellhead protection. Go ahead, Matt. So in summary, what I'd like to say is that we've done in the past an excellent job keeping our residential rates lower than our neighboring utilities, and we fall into the 1/3 lowest in the state. But as I said, now in the near future, with all these data centers occurring, you're going to see all this new generation being built. And that generation is actually going to include gas, but probably you'll see in the United States a lot of nuclear projects being announced and done, because that's what they're going to need to keep up with this demand. But if GLUE, Great Lakes Utilities, can build some local generation, that's going to help us, because then we're not purchasing as much power from the market. And with that, we did look at a lot of different locations. This was the location that we felt worked best for us. Again, it's by a substation, it's by a 3-phase power line, it's by equipment that we have. So the only cost to us is that $100,000 to connect it to the power lines. Go ahead, Matt. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Stanley and Eric from One Energy so that they can talk about their presentation.
Thanks a lot, Todd, and thank you for everyone for showing up and being part of this process and for the opportunity to share some info. My name is Stanley Minnick, and I'm with One Energy Renewables. I'm joined by my colleague Eric Udeloffen here. We're going to go through a number of slides talking about how we would construct the project and operate the project, and a little bit of details about our company. I believe there will be questions later. My colleague Eric's going to be writing down your questions, and I would kind of second what Todd said. My contact info is at the end of the presentation, and if anyone wants to reach out directly with questions, I would welcome that as well. So you can go to the next slide. Just a little bit about One Energy. We are what's referred to as an independent power producer. So we develop, own, and operate projects that typically interconnect with the distribution grid. That's kind of our specialty on our team. We've got an office in Madison that's got around 50, are we up to 60? 60 people, a mix of engineering staff, construction management staff, and then development staff, who are the folks who are out working on permits and things of that nature. We really emphasize, I guess our team, the team me and Eric are on, really focus on projects that are typically in the size like the one you're seeing, although we do sometimes work on larger projects as well. In this slide, I was alerted to is already out of date, but we're up to around 79 projects operating between Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa, and Illinois. A lot of our work going back over the years in the Midwest has been in Wisconsin, and this currently this year, we've constructed 20 projects, some of which have come online. As I think last week we had one come online, so those are coming online now. Go to the next slide. A lot of times we're asked how we come up with the land, like why we pick the spots we pick. In this case, I think Todd really covered that a lot, covered that pretty well in his presentation. The land, there was an option to work with this land where we are near a substation, it's relatively flat, and the surrounding tree screen being able to prevent the visual impacts was something that I also thought was appealing as well. And I'll just speak a little bit about some of the components of the solar projects themselves. The panels that we would use are what are called bifacial panels. That's just a fancy way to say that they can collect sunlight from both sides, bifacial, two faces. The advantage of that in Wisconsin in particular is during snowy winters, you've got a lot of reflectivity, the albedo effect, that light bouncing off of the snow, hitting the backside of the panels. With an old solar panel, that would be wasted. So the bifacial panels are a really nice addition to, particularly in Wisconsin. And then the other thing I would point out is a lot of projects early on maybe started off fixed tilt. They would just face south and just stay in one position. These projects, the rows would actually go north-south, and the panels start in the morning facing east and just track slowly throughout the day and end up facing west at the end of the day. And this allows us to get somewhere around 30 or 40% better production on the same amount of land. And then it also allows us to usually fit a larger project than we otherwise might be able to. The other element I'd point out here, the steel piles. So all of the modules, the panels would be mounted on a torque tube that runs down, and the piles are not set in concrete or anything like that. They're driven directly into the ground, the steel piles. And we'll talk a little bit later about plans for removal 30, 40 years down the road. A big reason we're able to plan for that removal is because we're not using 3-foot diameter cement piles everywhere. So that was a really good development. This is more information about the project, and I do have a larger print if anyone wants to look at this. If you want to stop and look at it later, we can chat. I'll just put it here for now. The green area in this image, and it'll be on the next slide as well, is the area that would have remaining trees. But the project that we're looking at here, it's a 5 megawatt project, as Todd mentioned. It's about 27, 28 acres of fenced area that would be planted in pollinator habitat, as mentioned. It's enough solar to produce around 10.5 million kilowatt hours a year, which, if you're not an energy nerd like me, translates to roughly 1,300 homes worth of electricity over a given year. And sorry, it's a little hard to see from here. I just want to see if I put anything else on there that I should address. The location, I think folks are familiar with. As Todd mentioned, there's already an existing access drive, so we wouldn't need to add another drive. And absent the construction phase, where there would be some increase in traffic, once the project's built, there's really only periodic visits by 1 or 2 people at a time. If there's something that needs to be repaired, or if there's vegetation maintenance that needs to occur, things like that. And this slide is just illustrating the vegetative buffer, the trees that would remain in place if this project were to move forward. I'm not sure which of those trees would have been removed if we didn't do solar here, but that remaining tree is something a lot of projects don't benefit from. A lot of the projects we have are a lot more visible than this one would be. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the other components. The picture on the left is what we call the virtual centralized inverters. Something we do with our designs that I think is pretty smart is instead of installing two 2,500 watt inverters, we install 20 250 watt inverters or KW inverters, excuse me. And the idea is that if we have an inverter failure, typically it's one or two of the inverters might go over the span of 10 or so years, whatever the case may be. We're not worrying about half of the site being shut down. We've only got one inverter that we need to go and replace. The other thing is stocking replacement inverters and getting them when they're smaller. It's a lot easier. If you're ordering a large inverter, you might have a much longer lead time. So we have, in a lot of cases, folks might distribute those inverters throughout the project. But what we do is we try to centralize those as close to the center of the project as we can. And in this case, I was just doing some rough measurements, and by doing that, we've got over 400 feet between the inverters and the transformers and any nearby properties. So rather than having those distributed throughout, we kind of keep them in one spot. And then the other item on the right side is the skid-mounted transformer. This goes back to that earlier comment about the cement. Instead of putting a pad down that we'd later have to worry about busting up and removing, we're able to do a lot of the work off-site in climate-controlled environment to prepare that transformer skid and then crane it and put it into place. And so it's on a steel pad instead of a concrete, or a steel skid instead of a concrete pad. So that aids in not only the quality, I think in the quality of the work that's done in a climate-controlled environment, but also makes it easier later if we're to remove that project down the road. For fencing, we, instead of using, I don't know, I've driven past some projects that have barbed wire and chain link, and we do not, that's not the approach we take. We use agricultural style perimeter fencing. It's like the 4-inch kind of woven wire fencing you might see near an apple orchard or something of that nature. It usually blends in with the scenery better, and frankly, I think just overall just looks better. And one other thing I'd add about the fence, it's 8 feet tall in order to meet the NEC requirement, the National Electric Code, just to keep folks out of there. Talk a little bit about some of the benefits that we see in projects like this. This slide is from a ribbon cutting in Cashton. That's the gentleman in fatigues was from Fort McCoy. He was, I think, the unit commander or something of that nature. And his idea of a good time when he showed up to this ribbon cutting was to take a lap, and I mean running, around the entire solar array. That's not how I like to start my ribbon cuttings, but you know, his excitement about the project is maybe personal, but I would say if you look at the history of renewable development, the military's seen a value in having diversified energy mix, just like a local utility. You need a mix of sources, and the military, especially early on, I think was a big investor in that technology. And this is one of my favorite slides. There are a lot of ways you can make a living, and some of them are family supporting, and others maybe not so much. With these projects, we like to think we're sending a signal to contractors who we might partner with that there's some demand here, there's work to be done. And you know, we talk to folks at the union halls, folks at different apprenticeships programs all the time, trying to get particularly younger folks into the trades, because I don't know if anyone's tried to hire a plumber or an electrician, but they're becoming fewer and far between. Getting folks out there working on these sites, even if the first thing they do is just lifting the panels in place and tightening a couple bolts, a lot of those folks, they realize they like working with their hands. They end up maybe becoming an electrical apprentice, and a few years later, they have a really great family supporting career. And that's something we go out of our way to encourage and try to foster with our projects. Another thing we love to do, frankly, whether this project were to move forward or not, we love talking to school groups, FFA, 4-H. If there's someone that wants to learn about how these projects can interact with agriculture or just generally want to learn about how these solar projects work, we're always happy to meet with them and make some time to present to groups and give tours of the projects and things like that. And this photo is a really nice photo, obviously. This is a really well-established pollinator habitat. Just to manage expectations, the process of establishing a prairie takes a little bit of time. It's not going to look like this day one. It takes time for the prairie to establish, and usually there's a handful of mowings each year in the first couple years as we try to keep the other weeds and less beneficial plants from seeding. And then after a year or 2, 3 years, you start to see a much denser pollinator habitat take hold. And there's a lot of benefits to that. I mean, I won't go into all of them because I want to keep things brief, but there's plenty of good to be said about, enhancing water infiltration, helping anyone nearby that's got a garden, things like that. Something that I don't think we would likely consider in this site, but we're doing other projects as well that aren't on, this type of parcel. And we really enjoy opportunities to manage vegetation with sheep, not goats. We have a no goats policy once the project is being built. We do use goats occasionally to come in and take down vegetation that's more dense before construction starts, but they have to leave before we start building or it's not good. Sheep are great. It's a great opportunity. We've got a couple of folks that they've built up businesses around bringing their sheep out to a site, leaving them there for a week, what have you, and then moving them to another site where they'll graze down as well. So we've been, our land stewardship team has been growing, and the work they're doing is pretty phenomenal. I would add too that, again, not for this site, but for other sites, we're looking at even ways to integrate cattle and produce farming as well, which is something we're really excited about. We get a lot of questions about property values, and it's a reasonable thing for folks to be concerned about. We totally understand that. You can find studies that have various conclusions. I think something that I heard earlier today in conversation is it's very situational. So what the impacts are and how great they are, I think vary by location quite a bit. And we've had some projects where a property adjacent to a solar project sold after the project was built. People built a home there, and those people were pleased as pie. That's not to say that's always the case, and we understand that that's a concern folks have, and we're happy to chat through that a little more. We get questions, various questions about do the panels leach any chemicals, things of that nature, and I think a lot of that comes from technology called thin film solar, which does have a higher concentration of I think it's cadmium and other chemicals. The panels we would be using are crystalline solar panels. They've got some silver solder in there. They've got the silicon, glass, and aluminum frames. All of that is highly recyclable, and all of that is, similar to the solar panels that have been out on people's homes and in their communities. And the sheep that we've got grazing under the panels, we've been doing that for a few years now, more than a few, and we've never had any adverse impacts for any of the sheep or anything like that from being around. Why not rooftops? I think Todd touched on this. Personally, I like all types of solar. I'm in the solar business. But the fact remains that for the amount of energy you get out of a solar panel, you're going to get more productivity and higher output by putting it on that single axis tracker And then similarly, the cost, even for rooftop solar, but especially for carport type solar structures, which we think are great, the cost for those carport structures, I want to say about three times what we would need to build these projects. So that can be quite prohibitive, especially when the aim is hedging against future price increases. We don't want a shiny 12, 15, 18-foot tall carport because it's going to cost a lot more and it's not going to have as much economic benefit to go around. And this one is probably the most boring slide I've ever put together. Forgive me for that. I'll try to put some pictures on the next time around, but this is about the removal. We get this question a lot. 30 years from now, how do we know, what's going to happen? And in all of the agreements that we sign with folks, we commit to remove the project if it doesn't produce power for a year. So it's very unlikely that that happens anytime prior to the end of life. But if during the project it's not producing power for a year, we're required to remove it. The removal costs are our responsibility, just like, and that, I mean One Energy's responsibility, just as all of the repairs and maintenance and construction costs are our responsibility. Further, and it's not related to decommissioning, but it's important to note that if the system's not producing power, we're not getting a check from the utility. That's a pretty strong motivator for us to get out and take care of things if and when they come up. But that decommissioning, it's something that in the ways we construct the project, we're making that easier down the road. But then also we usually will have a study done to look at the salvage value costs of the equipment and the decommissioning costs, and just so that we have an idea of what that might be moving forward. And I mentioned at the beginning, my contact info is on this slide deck. I did not realize that I also added my boss and my boss's boss here. Contact me if you have any questions, and I would be happy to address those. And again, thank you all for being here and for your time and attention.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Stanley. Kyle, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I just, I'll be brief. We did have a presentation here. We may have to work to stop this presentation and share it. But essentially, the public, the commission, the alders have been informed of the project. There are two statutory requirements for this project to move forward, one of which is a rezoning. That's where the zoning classification within the zoning code is changed. And the second is a conditional use permit, which is a special review permit process for unique type of uses. The second of the two would be void if the first doesn't happen, the first being the rezoning. So again, the conditional use is dependent upon the rezoning of the property. So as you can see now, we've got our presentation up here on the screen. I'm just going to change my screen here so I can bring up the presentation for those attending virtually to see. So again, without diving into the specifics of the project, which have been shared already, I'm primarily going to touch on the review criteria for a rezoning. So the number one criteria is that any rezoning is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. Right now, the property is zoned R2, mixed residential. The request has been made to rezone it to C1, which is the Conservancy District. The comprehensive plan identifies for this property to exist as residential moving forward. However, the comprehensive plan does indicate that a conservancy classification is consistent with that residential future land use category. I know I'm using some big terminology. The bottom line is the comprehensive plan does recognize the Conservancy District as being consistent, and we like to think bigger picture. So even if the property is rezoned but the solar project does not move forward, the Conservancy District is fitting for the wellhead protection area because it does restrict development moving forward. And obviously, I think it's in the city's best interest to protect those wells to ensure that there isn't additional uses, gas stations, things of that nature that could have catastrophic spills and so forth on the property. So again, Conservancy is consistent with the plan. We do feel as though it is fitting, aside from the end use, which is solar, and we are recommending approval of the rezoning. You've seen this. This is the wellhead protection map. We've zoomed in here to show you the well locations and then the different zones. Zone A is the more, I guess, the more important buffer, and then Zone B is the larger buffer. Within our wellhead protection document, we regulate the uses within both Zone A and Zone B. There are no discrepancies within that document. However, I will note that if the property does develop in the future as residential, so if the solar project did not move forward and the city or a developer wanted to look to build homes, those homes likely would have to have some sort of restricted covenants to regulate fertilizer. Water and Light does have concerns with nitrates from fertilizers working their way into the groundwater, as well as from bonfire pits and having flammable petroleum solvents used in igniting those fires. So that could certainly deter residential development. I'm not going to get in, speak further to that, but there would likely be restrictions if it were to develop as residential moving forward. So again, some of the things we use or we look at also when we review the zoning requests, other surrounding uses, surrounding land use classifications. You can see here what those surrounding uses are. Most of it is residential in this case. And again, I think the most important point to mention, which I've mentioned several times, is that if the rezoning happens and the solar does not happen, I think Conservancy is likely a better zoning classification to protect those city wells and that infrastructure. So again, we are recommending approval of that rezoning request. We're going to move right into the conditional use permit just so we're on the same topic, if that's okay.
Yep.
I know it is the next item. There will be 2 separate public hearings on each. As the mayor mentioned, you can certainly speak to both items the first time around, and you don't necessarily have to come up twice. So if the rezoning happens, the next step is that a conditional use permit has to be obtained. A conditional use permit is required for unique uses. Think of, a restaurant maybe in a residential district, let's say on Baker Street, where you've got more traffic, you've got headlights at night, you've got operating hours. That conditional use permit process may exist for a use like that in an area like that to provide conditions to prevent detriment to the surrounding property or to the neighborhood. For the same reason, the solar power plant is identified in our zoning code and requires that conditional use permit if the property's rezoned. So there are standards of review for this conditional use permit. Those standards of review were reviewed in the staff report. They're identified here. Again, a lot of this is just summarizing the request, so I'm not going to get into the specifics regarding that request and the acreage and so forth. You've seen the buffers that exist, the access points. But those are some of the standards of review that we review to determine whether or not it's going to be detrimental to the neighborhood or the surrounding property or to the city in general. A lot of things also don't apply, right? There isn't an architectural review here or a lighting or photometric plan review because it's just not applicable in this instance. We feel as though then, in summary, that those standards are met for the conditional use permit, and we are recommending approval of that as well, subject to the 3 conditions that are outlined above. I will lastly note that we did receive several emails and phone calls prior to the issuance of the Plan Commission packet. That totaled 8, and there are another few emails and phone calls that we received that I may enter into the record during the public hearing. With that, I conclude my presentation. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Could you, put you on the spot a little bit, but could you explain the comprehensive plan a little bit, just some details? Some people may know what it's about, some people don't.
Yeah, so probably 20 years ago now, the state of Wisconsin required all municipalities over a certain size to adopt a comprehensive plan by 2010. We had one prior, we've updated it since, but essentially is our one planning document that regulates all uses within the city, I should say future uses, existing uses. There are certain chapters, there's a housing chapter, transportation chapter. It really summarizes all development within the city in its current form, and then it identifies where we need to develop in the future. So it looks outside of our boundaries, it looks at surrounding municipalities, and guides the city's development as we work with private partners, developers, commercial, industrial users, or if we do our own sort of development as it relates to utilities, street department, things of that nature.
Thank you.
Yep.
At this point, I'll turn it over to any questions from the commission before we open up the public hearing. Mr. Austin?
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, everyone. And thanks to the mayor for clarifying that we won't be taking action tonight and that the Finance and Property will consider the land transfer before this comes back to Planning Commission. That settles part of the process, but one major issue is still unclear. Will the city approve the solar contract, or will it be Waterworks and Light Commission? This is a core concern for me. We're talking about using 25 to 30 acres of city-owned land for 30 to 40 years, yet we still have no visibility into the agreement that defines all the responsibilities, the financial commitments, and the risks. That contract is where everything that truly matters is spelled out. Who maintains the site, who carries liability, what happens if the developer sells the project, how the financial structure works, and how the site will be decommissioned. Decisions about rezoning and conditional use and land transfer should not move forward until the city and the public can see that document. Along with that, there's a major concern I continue to hear from residents, the huge disparity between what homeowners get for installing solar and what a utility scale developer gets. In this community, homeowners and small businesses get almost no meaningful incentives to install solar. Buyback rates are low, making it financially unattractive for local families to invest in clean energy. Meanwhile, the private developer for this project, using city-owned land, will receive major federal tax credits, as they've mentioned, accelerated depreciation benefits, more than likely, and developer fees. In other words, local residents get almost nothing for investing in their own solar, while a private company could receive a windfall for building on public land. That issue becomes even more troubling when we have not been allowed to see the contract that tells us what the city, or Waterworks and Light, is actually getting in return and what benefits One Energy will receive. We also haven't seen why Waterworks and Light couldn't build their own array project directly. As a community-owned utility, that option could allow local ratepayers, not an outside developer, to receive federal incentives. But again, without seeing the agreement, we have no real way to evaluate the alternatives. I want to be clear, I'm not against solar. What I am against is approving land use actions when we have zero visibility into the contract. So before this comes back to us, I think we need a very simple answer. Will the city review and approve the contract? If yes, then we should see it before making decisions, and if no, the residents deserve to hear it. Until we have clarity and transparency on the contract and the financial structure, I can't support the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. And again, we haven't necessarily touched on this subject. This is all public information, so there's no hidden contracts or anything like that. Did you want to speak to this a little further?
So, excuse me. So the lease agreement has been given to Sue and Matt to review, and that's something that we'll probably talk more in detail tomorrow at the Property and Finance meeting. The contract for the buyback rate is between Great Lakes Utilities and One Energy. I don't think I am allowed to give you the details of that contract, but what we could do, Ryan, is work with the board at Great Lakes Utilities to see if we can somehow get you that information so that you're more comfortable with it. I can tell you that the buyback rate is attractive to Great Lakes Utilities. So what we did in this process and I say we, I mean Great Lakes Utilities, is so every one of the 13 members sits on the board. And when we started looking at a solar project, we actually put it out for bids, and we had 37 different companies across the United States that bid the project. And we took about a 7-month time period to review every one of the companies and talk to them and then narrow it down. One Energy was chosen because their buyback cost was the lowest of all of the other 37, but also they were from Wisconsin, which we felt really good about, and they are very good at maintaining their sites, and they have a track record to show that. So those were the 3 items there that, hopefully, like I said, I can talk with the other members of Great Lakes Utilities, and we can, give you those details on the buyback price. Contract information that's in the lease, that we can share with you tomorrow. I think that's when it's going to be talked about. I have no control over federal incentives as far as who gets those or gets those, if it's fair or not fair. So I can't, help in any way in that regard. Any questions I'm missing that I could answer?
I'd say that sums it up.
Yeah.
For me, it's about transparency. And if we don't understand what the city is going to benefit from this project and what One Energy Renewables is going to benefit from this project, then that's not being transparent, and I can't support it. So.
Okay.
Just for clarification, do we, as WWLC, have the bandwidth to install a array like this?
Yep, that was the question I didn't answer. So a 5-megawatt project would cost about $13 million. So if the utility were to say, you know what, we want to just build this on our own without One Energy, that would be the price to our customers, which means we would have to go and borrow that money. And so now you're looking at paying that back over a course of probably 20 years. And so that starts becoming very unattractive as compared to this type of situation.
So just again for clarification, where this benefits in the bigger picture is the multiple arrays that are being built throughout the different communities, being able to join in a power price in order to get a better price from the generators.
That's exactly right. So by 7 or 8 of the members all putting in, say, a 5-megawatt array, or like in Marshfield's case, they're actually looking at 4 sites because they actually realize that $6 million benefit to their customers. So they're trying very hard to get multiple sites, whereas we're trying hard to just get one. So that's where you get the synergies and the better pricing. But then One Energy, of course, when they bid the project, they came in at a much lower price too. So that's another reason why they picked them. So I don't know if that helps.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from the commission?
I had a question, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Eric.
I had a question about the wellhead protection and the use of the property and saying that it cannot be residential. I see that most of the Rosewood subdivision is in that, and there's a lot of homes that are currently in that wellhead protection. Do we have any answers of why further answers of why this cannot be used as residential?
Yeah, so when you look at that protection zone, that was the DNR study from 1996. So the residents that are currently in the zone were there prior to the study happening. Actually having the residents in the zone already even deters you more from wanting to have more residents in the zone because you're already risking some of the zone by having the residents live there. So when it comes to future residents being there, you start looking at nitrates in your water if fertilizers are used. Nitrates cannot be removed from the water. So I had one of the council ask me, well, doesn't your water plant remove the nitrates? You can do, I think it's called reverse osmosis. Farmers are trying to do that to try to reestablish wells that have nitrates in them. But there is no type of water plant that can actually remove the nitrates once they're in your water supply. So that's why we feel very strongly about not allowing residents there. like Kyle mentioned, you would have to start putting restrictions. And how do you actually enforce those future restrictions? Do you have a police car drive through the neighborhood every hour to make sure nobody's fertilizing their lawn, or make sure they don't have a fire pit? Another thing Kyle didn't mention is you couldn't seal coat your driveway because the chemicals that can come off of the seal coat after it rains could contaminate the water supply. So you start putting a lot of risks, and when you look at, we only have 5 wells. If we contaminate one of the 5, we would have to build a new well, and right now that would have to be built south of town, and the iron in the water content south of town is much worse than the wells that are currently in service. So that means another new water plant would have to be built, and now you're looking at $80 to $100 million. So is it, a risk that the city would like to take to allow a few homes to be built so that we could risk our water supply? And the answer to that is no.
Thank you. Kyle, I'm not sure if you can answer this, but somebody in the community asked me about other communities who have built closer to the wellhead, have their zone and they encroach on it further. The studies are studies and they're reference guides. Is there anything specific that says absolutely not, you cannot do this in any community, or is it going to come down to the council to say yes or no to the distance from the actual wellhead?
Yeah, it's entirely up to the council. I would say the Village of Whiting, they actually put in an ordinance that does not allow any buildings being built in their Zone A of their wells. So I think in the past, Wisconsin Rapids never put that into effect, probably because they never thought anybody would want to build, knowing that could contaminate the well itself.
All right, and I'm asking these questions so everybody knows, to get information out there, not necessarily because I believe one way or the other on this, but if the wells do become contaminated, then what?
Then you need to find a new location to build a well. A well like the ones that we have would cost approximately $20 million for the well. But as I said, the water iron content is much higher south of these existing wells. And that's where the well would have to be built. So that would mean a second water treatment plant, because the existing water treatment plant could not handle removing the iron from a higher iron well. And that treatment plant, that's looking at $80 million, so that's where we're talking $100 million if we lose one of our 5 existing wells.
Okay, sorry for having you repeat yourself, although it was important, but my specifics that I was trying to get at is, why can't we get the nitrates out of the existing well once they're in there?
You could use reverse osmosis, which is not proven technology, and that's what some farmers are doing, and that's possible to do, but it's not proven that it could work. But the water treatment plant itself, you can't, once the nitrate is in the water, you can't remove the nitrate from the water. And I do have my water superintendent here if we want to really get into that, nuts and bolts of that, so he could speak as well.
I think I'm okay with the information you gave us. Does anybody else want to ask further questions?
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Coming from the paper mills, people always thought that they were guaranteed they were going to be there for a long time. So is there a binder that in 10, 20, 30 years, when it's time to take these away, is there something locked in that there's money going to be there to remove them?
So coming from the paper mill myself, that's a good question. I'll let One Energy speak on that.
So the lease agreements that we sign have, as Stanley mentioned, an obligation to remove the facility at the end of its life. And that's defined as either it stops producing for a period or at the end of the lease term. There's also language in there that we have to establish a security to cover that cost in the event that something were to happen to our company or the owner of the project. And that is assessed every 5 years, the cost to decommission by a third-party engineer, and then that sets the amount of the financial security. So it keeps, as inflation happens or whatever else happens over time, that resets the amount of the financial security to cover the cost to remove.
Would that be guaranteed if your company just happened to go bankrupt?
Yeah, that's the intent with the financial security. I will say 95% of our cost to generate electricity is incurred as of day one. So once it's there, you want to keep it operating as long as possible to then pay back the investment. So even in the event that One Energy went bankrupt, first thing a bankruptcy judge would do is say, hey, keep that thing operating, generating power, selling it to the utility so we can pay back the note. They would step in and operate the facility. So there's every incentive to keep that operating as long as possible. Even if there are minor issues, they replace those, minor issues, keep it operating and generating revenue for as long as possible.
Any other questions from the commission? Council? Mr. Tim?
Thank you for coming. And I know, Todd, we've had talks about this. I struggle with the amount of money that we are getting for the citizens to reduce their rates. My chicken scratch math, and I went through public schools, so this may not be accurate, but $200,000 divided by 15,000 customers equals $1.11 per month if we actually got that money to the citizens to reduce their rates. Is that accurate?
So that's the direct portion for Wisconsin Rapids. Where this becomes more attractive for Great Lakes Utilities is, again, this purchase power agreement with One Energy and the cost that they're buying the power from One Energy for. So right now that cost is slightly more than what Great Lakes Utilities is currently paying. But as I showed in that graph, the power costs on the market are going to start exponentially increasing. And so if you have a locked-in contract with One Energy for 30 years at this price that's slightly over what we're paying now, that's going to pay a lot of dividends for all of our customers in the future because, we're basically purchasing the power from Great Lakes Utilities, who is purchasing it from the market.
Okay. And can you explain a little bit about the snow removal process?
In terms of on the panels, or?
Correct.
Yeah, there's no active, we don't go out and remove the snow, but the dual axis trackers do have the capability to kind of shed that snow. We have remote monitoring, and we can, kind of see, oh, none of those modules in string one are producing, and they can cycle remotely. I don't know if dumping is the correct term, but just that go far all the way east, dump the snow off, and then return to the rotation. So,
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Ryan hit it correct on the contract. I guess that was my other thing on here, was to see that. This is obviously a big project. There's a lot of people here. I heard from between 10 and 12 of my constituents. Not a single one was for it. I'm kind of in that same boat. I don't see the benefits to the city. We have an amazing piece of property there. Whether or not you cut the trees down is your prerogative, but I think it's a beautiful piece of property that doesn't deserve solar panels, so I'm against it.
Just to clarify too, as we go through the finance and property, we will be signing something that's, if the commission or the committee and then the council wants to move forward, we're not signing the actual contract as of yet. We're signing basically a commitment to move forward, to get more information and get this out. So there's nothing that's like, they need to know that we're wanting to move forward or we're not. And if we're not, conversation's over. If we are, then the contract and more of the details are going to come to us at that time. Anybody else from the council? Mr. Veneman?
Yeah, how many members again are there on the Great Lake Utilities?
So there's currently 13 members, but 3 of the 13 joined in the last 2 months after the project was announced. So those 3 couldn't take part of the project because it was already passed when they entered. So that left 10. So there's 7 of the 10 are currently looking at hosting solar arrays that are there. And Manitowoc is not doing it only because they did this project themselves years earlier, so it wouldn't make no sense for them to host a second project because they already have a project from One Energy. I believe it was from One Energy, or So it's very similar to what the whole Great Lakes Utilities is proposing.
Did I miss it over the weekend? Is that in the packet, what those members are? Or-
Yeah, so that was one of the slides, and I can leave you that slide.
Thanks, I missed it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so my understanding is public hearing actually started when I started with the presentations. So at this point in time, I welcome anybody from the public to step forward. If you could say your name and address into the mic, make sure the yellow light is on. And again, feel free to ask questions or give us your thoughts for or against.
Tom Muse, 541 Canal Street. I have prior scheduling conflicts here, so I have to go first, so I apologize. First of all, I have been on social media with multiple of you discussing the ins and outs of solar. The reputation of solar here in Wisconsin Rapids has not necessarily been very positive. Between the solar array in the Nepco Lake region to the solar array on the top of the library have not gone with success. The solar array, from my understanding, this is approximately 15 years ago not 15 years ago, in 2014 when the solar array in the Nepco Lake area, it actually led to litigation against the Water and Light Company here in Wisconsin Rapids that increased our utility bills by 17% overnight. Because of the reputation between the library and the Nepco Lake solar array, I have completely written off the idea of basically even accepting solar as a alternative energy interest. Some of the questions I have from the presentation is that one of the first slides said that it would cost about $100,000 for the initial installation. At that point, then the Greater Lakes would assume responsibility from that. While I was looking into solar on different homes, the insurance cost to install solar on your home for a 100 square foot area is $75 a year. Where is the insurance company money being funded for to cover the solar panels themselves? Is being covered by the installers, the owners? Is it something going to be covered by the city's insurance? That would, obviously, if it's city insurance, it would come from the taxpayers. Right towards the end of the main presentation, the comment was made that if the solar company was not making money, they would not be doing it. With the introduction of this to the citizens of Wisconsin Rapids, it was announced that it would benefit our utility rates. From what we have learned from this presentation and that, it is not necessarily going to lower our utility rates. It is something to put an insurance in there for somebody else's benefit, not the citizens of Wisconsin Rapids. And for that reason, I would suggest to any of our council members, committee members, that at this time right now is when you should kill this. And stop wasting time. Don't even have to go any further than this. If it goes till tomorrow night, kill it at the committee meeting. I believe that the individuals standing behind here have voiced their opinions without having to turn to any kind of referendum or get any further public input. With that, thank you.
Thank you. Did we want to talk about the insurance?
Do you want us to kind of respond as we go, or?
It's up to the mayor.
Yeah. Do we have an answer on the insurance?
Yeah, our contract, both the lease agreement and the power purchase agreement, require us to carry an insurance policy to cover any risk of loss, whether it's due to natural disaster, theft, anything of that nature. So there's no requirement that the city hold any kind of insurance policy for the project.
All right. And then Todd, do we want to touch base at all, and maybe you don't have the information on the difference between this and the library situation?
So, when it comes to the library, we were not, Water and Light was not actively asked to participate with the library to talk about the contract. So the contract was actually between the library and the contractor that did the solar array. When we started actually finally being asked to have our input, we noticed right away that the contract that was signed was not profitable for the city or the library, and we tried to stop the project ourselves, and it did not take place. And because I think the project was already too far along, the contracts are already signed. I can tell you that last year, when the litigation was finally gone through and the library took ownership of the solar array, I personally myself came over there with our 2 electricians, and we actually put the array back in service for them because the contractor had taken out parts and pieces that he had supplied so that, you know, that they were rightfully his material. And we did that at no cost to the library. We were happy to help. And so that's what I can say about the library project.
All right, thank you. Back to the public. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against, come on up. If you would give us your name and address, please, we appreciate it.
Joel Lazat, 1651 Township Avenue. I'm located at very close to the project, and you've answered a lot of the questions. Thank you. Thank you for giving me time. The question I had was, over and above the questions that have been answered, is what happens in the installation phase, and where is that entrance from? And then the second part is, and then during the maintenance time, are these large trucks coming in and out abundantly, or how's that going to work?
So during construction takes usually about 3 months for the majority of the installation. And then on either side, there's about 2 months of much less traffic. But the majority takes place basically in the summer, the 3 summer months. All the access would be via that existing driveway that accesses the well. So there wouldn't be a new driveway built, and then it would just be an extension built onto that to access the solar array.
And where's the entrance to that, where everything's coming in and out?
So that's
I couldn't, yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. I live on Township. Yeah, I live on Township, and it's right at the end of the block. I've seen a lot of traffic, and my concern is it's a residential area. We'd like to keep it as a residential area. If this is the best solution to the problem, I've been a resident here since 1970, and we need to go forward on one way or the other to make this decision. And so being in technology all my life, starting from 1970 to on up, I've taught here, developed programs here for West Union High School and Nakusa, and always promoted alternative energies. And what is the best solution to the problem, short-term or long-term? And so I have mixed emotions about this, but we, as residents, we need to do the best thing for the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, I cut off I didn't respond on the operations period, but during the operations period, if you see 1 truck a month, that would be average, and it's usually just a pickup truck with a maintenance technician that's either doing scheduled maintenance or like lawn, mowing or that sort of thing during the summer. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Yvonne Audi, 3310 20th Street South. I'm about 2 blocks from this project. I want to understand what you said earlier, Mayor. So tomorrow, there's a zoning committee meeting. After that, there's going to be 2 more public hearings before a final decision is made, or is that not accurate?
So tomorrow will be the Finance and Property Committee meeting, and that is with 3 of the aldermen. And that's the committee that it should have actually gone through first to say, do we want this or don't we? And those 3 aldermen would then vote it up or down. And if they vote it yes, it'll go to the full council for them to vote it either up or down. If they vote it down, again, the conversation's over. If they vote it up, then we would go to a special, well, okay, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, and we don't even know if we'll do this for sure. But if tomorrow they vote it down, then we would wait till the council meeting, and they can pull it out of the minutes as a full council and vote it, assuming if they pull it out, they're gonna talk about it and then vote it up or down. They vote it down, it's over, the question's over. If they vote it up, then we would have to set up another planning commission meeting like this in January to bring these two questions back to the table, because these shouldn't have been asked until we knew if we were going forward. Again, that's where my fault came in. But if tomorrow they voted through to pass it to the committee, we can set up a special a special planning commission meeting next week or after that, before the committee meeting, to talk about these two questions that we're talking about now. And then we can bring it all to the council on the third Tuesday of December.
And the public will still have another chance to speak, or
No,
is
this
this it?
is the public hearing, right?
Okay.
That's why I didn't want to stop.
That's
it.
why I wanted to make sure before I
Yep.
start these remarks.
Thank you for the
So,
clarifying question.
I love solar. I think solar's great. This is not the right place for it. And you mentioned that there's some other places. I really hope you all take some time and have them look at some of the other places for it, because I bow hunt in that area. I get your permit, I go out there and bow hunt. I have pictures I could show you of the white deer and the albino squirrel and all the other wildlife. Whether you cut those trees down now or later, the wildlife will still be able to come there. But if you throw a fence up and put these solar panels down, we're going to lose all that wildlife. And I know one of the slides talked about temperatures not going up or changing, or the environment not changing, but I have a whole bunch of research that I've done over the last few weeks that temperatures do raise, the environment will change. And I haven't seen anything, and I hope you all keep asking questions of what are the benefits to us, the consumer, and what is the benefit to the town, because y'all haven't answered those questions for us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jim?
John Bergen, 4411 Quarry Circle. Also a member of the Waterworks and Lighting Commission. I serve on that commission. We definitely have looked at the economics of this, and I think maybe we can do a much better job presenting out here to the community, and we'll strive to do that. And I think there's some things that we can even get together for tomorrow's meeting, if you will. But I think if you pay attention to what's happening around the United States as the impact of these data centers, or if you look at what's happening to the electrical bills in the East Coast, if you will, where there are a lot of these data centers, they're paying more than double what we're paying for our electrical energy, okay? So this effort is an attempt to mitigate cost increases, and this behind-the-meter approach for us, if you will also help us tremendously during the most expensive. We expect solar will generate at its peak during the time when we have the greatest demand, where we're paying the very highest price, if you will, for our electrical power. We equalize some of that so you don't necessarily see it in every bill, but you do see it. So I think we all need to think about this, and that curve showing the geometric progression of energy costs, and particularly electrical energy, is no joke, and it will impact this community. So we're looking for ways to mitigate that, and I think we all need to think about that as well as the impact on basically 40 acres of land, okay? I think we will find over the years, the 25 to 30 years that this will be in operation, and some would say perhaps longer, we will more than generate a return. And I will speak with our financial folks tomorrow, and we will have some better numbers for you looking at what the impact of this will actually be. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, John. Todd, could you explain behind the meter?
Yeah, so behind the meter means that the energy that's being generated is actually being consumed right at the residents and the businesses around the solar array. So this type of project is allowing us to not have to purchase as much power or transmit as much power on what's called the American Transmission Company power lines. And that's where you start seeing the savings. It's when I try to explain it, as like you're in Illinois and you got to pay a toll. Well, a small car is going to pay a lot less for a semi. So if we can be generating power right at our peak, we're not transporting power to our community over these lines that we don't own, so we don't have to pay for that. So that's the advantage of this type of project. And it's really completely different than the project that's out in Rome. That's an actual project that's generating a ton of electricity that then is being sold, and it's not being as consumed as in the local market because there's so much of it being generated. But our average load is about 30 megawatts. This produces about 5. And why we are able to get these attractive prices in this contract for Great Lakes Utilities is with One Energy is you don't have to go through all the federal type approvals because you're not actually generating any power that you're pushing back onto the grid. So like I said, our load is 30, this is generating 5, so we're still purchasing the 25, but you know, that's why we get a much better price than, you know, somebody else.
Thank you. Back to the public. Anybody else wish to speak? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Susan Faust, 3310 18th Street South. I'm just having a question. Has there been an environmental impact assessment been done on this property yet?
I don't think we've got to that step. We're first trying to figure out if it's something that would move forward.
Okay, so if we sign that contract saying, yes, we're going to move forward, would that assessment be done and then we review that again before we sign a permanent contract?
So the carbon of a 5 megawatt array is equivalent to the carbon sequestration of over 8,000 acres of trees. And so to John's question, you're losing 40 acres of trees, but you're actually, with this being a renewable energy source, you're eliminating 8,000, what would take 8,000 acres of trees to remove carbon from the atmosphere.
Okay. So you were saying that residential property can't be built on there because of the contamination of the wells.
Right.
So again, do we have a
So I'm
do we have a
going.
record of what contamination these solar panels are going to go into? Because any of the runoffs, any of the aluminums, if you're doing a hydraulic system, if we have a hydraulic leak, that's going to go into our ground. Do we have any records of how much that is going to go into our waterways as well?
Okay, so a lot of people were commenting on that question, and so I tried to do a lot of research myself to see is there any actual research that talks about these types of solar panels leaking into the groundwater. I could not find any research that could prove that fact. If I could, I would have stopped the project right there and then. If you can find some type of research that shows that, I would love to see it because I too would then say we can't do this because it's above our wells.
Okay.
Yep.
Also, just real quick, I'm kind of against the solar project as well. I'm not against it, but just for this particular area. I live near there. There is a lot of wildlife, and my main concern is if that wildlife goes, is it going to come more into my cities? Going after the animals and I have a lot of kids in my neighborhood too, so I just hate to see those trees go. I have other questions, but I'll keep going. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Sandy Williams, and my husband Michael and I live at 2110 Whitrock Avenue, which is right across my front door from this proposed plan. Now, these things I'm about to say are some opinions and how I feel about it, because you have promised us all that we could be heard before decisions are made. And we received a letter that ruffled everyone's feathers in October about a meeting that was going to take place November 3rd. So the neighbors talked to each other and everybody was concerned and pictures were taken. I saw people that were walking the area. My husband and I even walked the entire woods all the way back to the ridges to see just how big it looked, what was going to happen. And we were alarmed that 2 to 3 days prior to this meeting, it was canceled. Now, we didn't know where to go for information, my husband and I, and we think, you know, we're just regular people. So we called our alderperson, who was very helpful, Madeline Palmquist, and she told us the plan. So that's where we got our first information from, okay? So the next phone call we made was then to the Grand Rapids town chairman, because I do, or my husband and I both own some land in Grand Rapids, and he, rightfully so, informed us that he belongs to you, Mr. Waterworks and Lighting Commission. He's one of your officers of whatever. So I was able to get some information from him that was very useful. And then, of course, Mr. Mayor Zager, I talked to you. Okay, so this is kind of where we got our information from. Okay, so we learned that we were going to have this meeting today, and we were going to be able to finally speak our piece and feel very glad that we can. But I would like to ask this council, and before moving forward, and also comment, that a lot of this is sounding like gobbledygook to a regular person, simply because you're scaring people about water, you know, and the parts per million of a few more nitrates from 5 more houses, I do not think is going to affect having to build a new well. I'm sorry, but I was a filter plant operator, and I know how that works. So let's get right down to what is happening, to my way of thinking. You, Mr. Waterworks and Lighting Commission, are asking us homeowners, the Ridges, you know, we all live right there, this sweet residential area in this lovely city of Wisconsin Rapids, to virtually walk out our front door and look at an 80-foot fence, which it looks like it belongs in the Wildwood Zoo in Marshfield, to be honest with you, and we will see it. You can see through trees and bush. And maybe you were going to cut down woods before, and maybe you will again. We hear a saw going in there every once in a while. But I would think, Mr. Mayor, that all of this council would really be concerned about building Wisconsin Rapids and drawing more residents, making residential areas affordable and attractive, because that's where you get your money from, is us taxpayers. So it just feels to me like you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're building a 5-megawatt solar system, which to me is tiddlywinks. It isn't going to do any good. You look at Saratoga; they're built up. You know, they build them out in areas that were burnt or big forest lands, and it takes acres and acres to make a difference for this electricity. What is this little bitty blip going to do for us? Right now, it doesn't look to me like a darn thing. Your comrade was nice enough to tell me that all of this electricity generated from this solar panel farm goes to the big lot in the sky. You are going to be able to buy back a certain percentage at a discounted rate for 30 years. And that's going to flatten any increases or help flatten our cost adjustment increases. But we know the Waterworks and Lighting Commission, we all got huge water rate increases. And we got a great big old business park over there that doesn't have anybody in it because we had to have it, and we had to have the sewer to support it, and so on and so forth. So we're a little bit skeptical on this one, and we don't really think that it benefits Wisconsin Rapids to help this organization for the Great Lakes, whatever, get all this energy at the price of what we're paying to look at, the woods we're giving up, the residential area that disappears. So to me, it just doesn't look like a good deal, and it blows my mind that you want to consider such a little piece of something. And also that it appears to be moving forward a lot faster, Mr. Mayor, than you say it is, because we already heard that it's been recommended. Mr. Kearns tells us that they have moved it forward that far to recommend that this goes through the zoning permits and the building permits. So, and I don't even get into protecting the well caps, but in conclusion, I just want to say that, you know, my husband and I are wholeheartedly against this because I just don't see what we get out of it. I really don't. And we respectfully, I mean this really, understand the job you've got because everybody needs more power and nobody wants one of these next to them. And nobody is going to buy our house with a solar panel across the street. I don't care what One Energy says. It affects the property values. Case closed. So we would, like I said, respectfully request that you really seriously consider this. And as the other gentleman, Mr. Austin, brought up, we don't know what's in that contract. 30 years is a long time. We'll be dead. You know, a lot of things change. So we would like to ask that you nip this in the bud. If you're going to go for it big. You know, go for the 20 acres or 20,000 acres that's required to do the megawatts that might benefit before all of these other areas in this little group you've got going on. Everybody's jumping on your bandwagon. Well, I wonder why that is. I wonder why that is. So we'd like to protect our existing well caps, and we'd like you to not, the zoning change, I guess if you want to put it in a conservatory, it doesn't sound so terrible, but please, please do not give this exceptional, not well thought through building permit to this deal. I just don't see the benefit, and I sure hope that you think it through. And with that, I've said my piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi there, Brian Slinkman. I am a non-resident, but I own property in Wisconsin Rapids. Am I allowed to speak?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I had some questions about the wellhead protection zones. I've done a little research, and it doesn't appear that the DNR has any regulations on distance from wellheads. And it sounds like the Village of Whiting has. I was surprised to see that one well had a bigger zone than another zone. And is there any sort of reasoning for that? The other talk was about the wellhead protection from 1996 was the last conversation, but Rosewood was built after that. I understand that, you know, a subdivision with septic systems probably wouldn't be ideal over a well, but if there's ever a point where city water and sewer comes in, I think that could really make an impact on what could be done. I'm in real estate, I see a need for residential. I think our city sees a need for residential because we keep doing housing studies and they keep saying that there's a need for residential homes in Wisconsin Rapids. So I think there are other opportunities and locations available. The city spent a lot of money on business parks. The East Side Business Park is a great example, which is already zoned to allow for conditional use for solar. There's an industrial park off of 48th Street that has some vacant space. So I just think there's some other opportunities, but just wanted to pass that along.
Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Whalen. My address is 211 15th Avenue North. and I am here to speak in favor of this project. I think I'd like to thank Todd and the whole board on Waterworks and Lighting Commission for the careful work that they've done looking into this and investigating it. I, for one, have been watching, and I see even just this past week that several utilities in the state of Wisconsin have been approved for rate increases, and that is just going to continue because of the increased use of energy that we have all around us. There are data centers that are constantly, I mean, they are looking for our rural areas that they can, you know, just swoop in and grab tons. And when they do come in, they will automatically, dramatically increase the rates because they're using so much. I mean, I think it's, I'd like to, you know, have just an idea. How much does an average data center use?
So like I had said earlier, our average usage for the whole city is about 30 megawatts. We peak at actually double that in the summer when it's really hot out. Typical data centers that want to come in start at about 20 megawatts and they go up to 100 within a few years. So if you did a data center, it would double, it'd be the same amount as the city uses initially, and it'd probably be double what the city uses in a few years from then.
You know, the idea of this project is to help us control those costs over time, and that it's not going to, you know, obviously eliminate people's electric bills, but when we're faced with those increasing rates, and that when we're talking, you know, if there's nothing done, we're talking, you know, I mean, I'm thinking, let's see, I pay, you know, how much, and, you know, as I look and I see, can I afford to have that quadruple, especially when I go into my retirement age? No. I am happy to see that they are looking 30 years ahead to try to mitigate the impact that that is going to have on our city. I know that they're also looking at, I mean, they're also looking at reciprocating gas, natural gas plants, things like that, which increase, you know, air pollution and are not efficient. They just, they could be, you know, yeah, those could be in the industrial park, but when I'm out in that area, and I'm actually over in that area, I, you know, enjoy the woods just as much as others. And I think about that 20, you know, the 20-some acres that would be cut. And I'm out there and I see the trees and I see it is just red pine, red pine, red pine, oh, maybe a white pine, and a few smaller things, a ton of invasive species. And I think, oh my goodness, I'm part of Central Wisconsin Wild Ones, and we promote native plants. And I have just kind of the root system, and that would show you trees pretty much have about maybe 4 or 5 feet, you know, root system. These native plants, if you put in native Wisconsin plants, they go down to like 15 feet, some of them. That native root system actually has been shown that it actually does a really good job of absorbing chemicals, pollutants, things like that. It would actually be a big benefit not only to the pollinators and the insects, birds, it would also, small mammals, things that could get through the fence, but you know, it would end up having a big impact on the water quality, and that over time. And they're self-replicating, and they're beautiful. With people talk about, you know, that they're going to be able to see the solar panels, and I'm looking at this and I'm going, that's a 150-foot setback. I mean, that's a lot of trees in between, you know, that and the solar panels. I don't think that it's going to end up being that much of an impact. When you go across and you look over, when you go down the road and you see that, that well connector, that little road, that sits way back there. And that even where it ends, that's about where it's going to begin, the fencing, I believe. That seems to me like a long way back. And I think that's, that's critical. They're doing, I think, a really good job of planning that out. So I am really in favor of this. I think there's a lot of benefits to it. We have the county park nearby, which has a lot of habitat, which people, please, if you want to improve habitat, I will meet you out there and we will pull invasive plants. There's also, we've got the two other, I know I'm getting long, we got two other plots that are really close by. And, we definitely, aren't planning on, putting more in, I believe. My only argument is I agree with Ryan, I would like to see us pursue a little bit more community solar and that. And I know that on a, because we have our own utility, that is an option for Wisconsin Rapids and would let people to do that. And I'd like to see that, that be an option because it's available now. And it can be really effective for homeowners to, that are interested in that to man down. So thanks for putting up with me. If you have any questions about the native plants and stuff, let me know. We actually did talk about, going in and, doing an inventory with wild ones and removing any endangered species that would be there. But hopefully we will focus, I don't know about One Energy's policy. If you, I see on your pictures, I'm nitpicking, but there's some like non-native species in that pollinator mix. So we have a lot of Karna blue butterflies this is the hot spot. And that sand could make amazing habitat for those with putting in native lupin. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I really disagree with her. First of all, how much is my heat bill going to go down? Or my electrical bill going down? Can you tell me when are we going to see the results of our electrical bill going down and how much? When?
Electric bills are never going to go down in our lifetime. As we saw in that graph, they're only going to go up, and they're going to go up a lot more. And so that's, one of the questions people keep saying, well, how much is my bill going down? It's never going down.
All right, are these hail resistant? And this is right next to a golf course. Are they going to get hit by golf balls? And are they going to be, who's going to pay for all that?
The panels, when they're remotely operated and when there's environmental conditions that promote hail, they go into the steepest position that they can be, so the angle of incidence is as low as possible. But even with that, they're designed to withstand hail impacts. We've installed, tens of thousands of panels across the state, and I think I've seen 2 that got hail damage, and it was basically the frame fractured in, but it was, it's tempered glass like a windshield, so it splinters, but it stays contained within the panel itself. So hail is not a major concern for projects in Wisconsin.
Well, about 5 years ago, I saw like at least 25 cars driving through Rapids with the windshields and the back windows all out, and people are putting plastic over the windows. We do get some big hail here, and I kind of don't think those are going to stand up to the hail. Okay, so how about you're heating up the ground underneath it? What about when the sun goes down there, heats all this ground up? What about all this global warming type thing,
Yeah, thanks for asking. The heat issue is something that we get a lot. Basically, anyone that's walked around a solar project and actually touched the panels when the sun's at its highest point it's very easy to tell that they're not hot and they don't heat up the surrounding area. It's just they're designed to absorb the sun's energy. They're not designed to reflect it back.
So the
if
ground
you
underneath
put your
each
hand-
panel is not warm at all. That ground underneath the panel is not it's not
That's right.
warm.
Yeah, the ground beneath the panel is in shade. So we actually see on our sites that are grazed by sheep, they all congregate right underneath the panel during the middle of hot days because they want to be in the shade where it's cooler. And all of our grazers say that their herds are much healthier when they're grazing our sites because they have access to cooler areas during the heat of the day.
Okay, you're talking 25 acres. All right, so how long before these, 30, 40 years, that sounds a long ways away, but then when I look at 30 years ago, that wasn't very long ago at all for me. 30, 40 years isn't very long ago for me. So these aren't going to last that long. So where are these? I've heard that these to be recycled are very expensive to recycle. Who pays for all that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Solar panels are about 98% recoverable for recycling purposes. When we build a project like this one, let's say it's got 10,000 panels, there might be 3 or 4 that are damaged during shipping and handling. So we palletize those and have them picked up by an outfit called TRC out of Minnesota that truck runs through Wisconsin to pick up recyclable materials. It costs about $7 per panel today. There's not much solar material, so the equipment to recycle them is not highly utilized. But as that increases over time, the cost should go down. But it's very, very cost effective today even to recycle.
Okay, we talked about wildlife, and we have a lot of nice, wonderful wildlife around here. And you put up those 8-foot fences out there. Where are those deer supposed to go? Where are these wildlife? Where are all these? Our wildlife is trying to get into the city as it is, okay? Because we have no place for them. And then when you looked at these, you say about these border trees, I drive out there towards Stevens Point Plover on that back road, Prairie something road. It's west of Plover, okay? Drive out there one time and look at those ugly solar panels out there, or down by, where is it? Down toward Friendship or the Rome and that kind of thing, okay? Drive out there. Do you really want one of those in your backyard right across the road from your house? Your property value goes down. Don't tell me they won't. And the 8-foot fence, poor wildlife. And the pollinators, wouldn't they be better off without that?
So at my farm, we've got solar panels mounted on the ground, mounted on the roof. We put it up in
25 acres worth?
2013.
25
No, I
acres
was just
worth
going to
right
respond
there?
to that earlier question. That system's still producing the same it is today as it did when we installed it over 12 years ago. The panels are very simple, and there's no moving parts other than the tracking mechanism. So they're very easy to imagine, and easy based on experience of the industry to imagine lasting that full duration and beyond. As far as the visual, when I see that system on our barn roof producing, and every time the sun comes up and it's offsetting all of our usage, that's very empowering. And I think in certain ways that could be the same thing for the community, because it is something, in this case, the power is all being used locally. It could be viewed as a way to, enhance the resiliency and enhance the city's ability to generate its own electricity, not
So you're
import it.
guaranteeing us that this thing, how much power would that make? Okay, that 25-acre solar power panels, how long would that per day provide electricity for Wisconsin Rapids today?
How long would it produce today? In the winter, the days are shorter, absolutely. In the summer, they're longer. So yeah, it produces less energy in the winter. But I would say that when there's snow on the ground, if we do get a bright day, that's when it's going to reach its maximum efficiency, because it's getting electricity bounced, or sunlight bounced off the snow, and everything's also cool, so that's when the electronics work better. So we've got an array up in Rhinelander, and there are definitely days in the winter where we've got 7 hours of full output.
Okay, so I don't really know megawatts and all that kind of stuff, but I'd kind of like to know, how long would that 1 day's worth of electricity from the panels run all of Wisconsin Rapids? Just give me a little estimate on that. I'll go sit down and let somebody else.
Hello, Tim Esselman. I'm at 2561 Lovewood Drive. I too lived in a mill environment. Thank you, Mayor, for trying to make this as transparent as possible after the first cancellation of the meeting. Been in the area for 37 years. Live right across the street from the big well. The question that I have would be with the mills shutting down, the power company that own the turbines and stuff. I've been on Earth longer than I'm going to be moving forward, okay? I believe in the renewable energy. What I don't understand is we have something here already that's producing energy for us. It's been in Wisconsin for a long time. It's the hardest working river in the nation. I don't understand why we're not utilizing that power to work this, okay? We're decimating the environment. We're tearing areas down that could be used for other things. What that may be, I don't know. All I know is that we have something that's looking at us right in the face that could produce power for us. Thanks.
So to answer that question, I'm an electrical engineer by trade. Right out of college, I went to work in corporate engineering at Consolidated Papers. From 1990 to 2000, I was part of the teams that built the paper machines in this area. When the mill was purchased by Stora Enso, I moved out of corporate engineering because it was dissolved, and I worked for Consolidated Water Power Company for 8 years. During those 8 years, I was the engineer, the only electrical engineer at that power company. We rebuilt the 5 hydro plants that power company owns. Those dams are at Dubay, Stevens Point, Whiting, Buren, and Wisconsin Rapids. When I left that company, we had the third buyout by that point, and that's why I came over to Water and Light, because I wanted to stay in the area. I had small kids. I didn't want to have to transfer schools, and I've been there now for 18 years. To answer your question of why that we're not using that energy, Consolidated Water Power Company, which is a completely separate power company, owns those dams, and they still have the Stevens Point paper mill that's running. They still have the Buren paper mill that's running, and they still have a partial mill running at Wisconsin Rapids. They actually use more power than those 5 hydro plants can produce. So Consolidated Water Power Company not only uses that power that they generate, but they actually have to go and purchase power, just like how the city is purchasing power. So that power is not available.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
John Frizzell, 2510 Lovewood Drive. I'd like to echo, I think the mayor and Elizabeth is who we got the letter from. And I apologize if my ignorance wastes people's time behind me, but is the property that we're talking about, am I correct that that is in the town of Grand Rapids, but it's owned by the city of Wisconsin Rapids?
The property is within the city limits of Wisconsin Rapids, and it's owned by Wisconsin Rapids.
But everything else around there is in Grand Rapids?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. I would just like to emphasize that had we not gotten this letter because we live in Grand Rapids, we would have not known anything about this, most likely, because we don't have a reason to go on the Wisconsin Rapids organizational website, Living in Grand Rapids. And I don't have an alder person that I can call because this is a project and I live in one of those big circles. My house is right in there. Please keep in mind that the majority of the homeowners that are in that plan have no representation when it comes to the vote that's going to be coming up because we have nobody that we can call. Thank you.
I do want to just say real quick, and I appreciate your perspective, even though we're elected by our residents from our community, and that's who we have to, represent first. But I'll say me, but I haven't met any aldermen that don't care enough about the residents in the other communities that they wouldn't have a conversation to give you as much information and try to have, neighborly conversations with you guys. So please reach out to us. And our beautiful new website is out there. Please go to it and use it if you can. It's got a ton of information, and we're trying to put more on it all the time. So we do want to communicate with everybody as much as possible. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Cal Thomas, 351 Stroudman. I just want to say I came in tonight's meeting with an open mind. I want to hear the materials presented, and after listening to those, here are just kind of questions and concerns that I have that I believe may still be open, at least in part. First, I find it a bit concerning hearing from council members here that they also have concerns about lack of transparency, that they have concerns about some of the process that's been taken to date and issues there. I also have questions about some of the conflicting information presented. In particular, I hear about the potential plans with the surrounding trees and the buffering there, but I note that on the information presented to the public before tonight, it was made clear that the tree buffer would be using existing trees, where that doesn't seem to potentially be the case, but please correct me.
It's using existing trees.
Okay. But I also understand that it may not be a 150-foot buffer of that, but that could be either way. I also question that if the commission feels strongly about this project, which I will defer to their expertise here, why more consideration hasn't been given into a greater investment in doing them themselves if they believe strongly here. I also have questions about some of the economic terms that have been floated, particularly why it seems that there is a 30-year fixed deal with the GLU, is my understanding, how the economics of this deal came to light, and if there are any more economics regarding the contract that could be shared with the public for them to assess the viability of this, rather than kind of just a conceptual, do you want a solar project, yes or no? And then lastly, I'm a bit, concerned that this is now being presented on, we have to make a decision very soon to take advantage of these tax credits, when it was presented years ago through the usage graphs and whatnot that this is going to be a problem. And at this point, it now feels like make a decision soon, when this could have been handled before, and now we're running into an issue where there may not be a comfort with the information presented to be provided in this timeline. Thank you.
I just want to address real quick. I think we do strive really hard. Again, I would say the trickiest part about life right now is how do we get all the information to every single person? What form of communication between newspapers going away, radios going away, TVs, and so then you got social media. So we do our best. But again, it's always best to just come in and ask the questions. I think I try my hardest to communicate with the aldermen, and they know how to get hold of me at any time of day. So we do our best to make sure it's transparent as possible, always. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank everybody for the preparations for this presentation. It was very thorough, I believe, and answered many of the questions that I and my wife had about the project. My name is John Clark. I live at 4110 Ridgeview Lane, which is right across the street from the project on Whitrock. And the question I have is how many new jobs, and are they at a living wage, are going to be created because of the project?
Yeah, great question. So this year I think Stanley was mentioning, we've built about 20 projects. We've built all of those with union contractors that are based in Wisconsin. And those, that our average apprenticeship rate on the projects are 30%. So about 30% of the people working on those sites are apprentices, meaning they're being paid by us to take classes and learn on the job. They get paid quite well. Stanley mentioned that it's a family supporting wage, and I absolutely agree with that. We see the wage rates and we have to submit those, and once those apprentices become part of the union, then they can work as an electrician or a tradesperson, whatever they're pursuing. Doesn't have to be in solar. We hope that they like working in solar, but it could be in any other type of contractor. But to your specific question, the project will employ about 40 people during construction. I mentioned that's 40 people during the 3-month window. It's about 10 people for the ramp up and 10 people for the ramp down at the 2 months on either end. So while these individual projects are not like a major job creator, we have had about 20 projects for the last 3 years, and we try to work with the same contractors and build up those relationships over time. So there are many people that have come into they've been apprentices 5-6 years ago, and they've worked on our projects 5 or 6 or 7 years around the state, and it's quite a good profession. So
And are we using American technology for the cells?
Yeah, the majority of our panels for our projects next year, which this project would be not in that group, but it'd be after that group. The majority of our panels for next year are coming from a plant in Houston, SEG, and going forward with where tariffs are at, I think that's probably going to be the reality for us in the future, is that we are using American panels. All of our racking and steel is all American. It doesn't make sense to ship that stuff. It's very heavy. Transformers are all coming from a plant in southeast Wisconsin near Racine by Eaton Cooper. And we work with a special fabricator in Winneconne that makes all those skids that Stanley was mentioning. So solar is American. It was developed at Bell Labs in the 50s. And we all of our engineers improved it over the decades. We lost our kind of primacy in the manufacturing space over the last decade to other countries, but it is coming back to the States, and there are plenty of people here who understand it and can set up and can operate those factories.
The land use, again, I'm looking at return for the citizens of Wisconsin Rapids, and looking at residential development and the tax base that might provide for a long time, beyond the 30 years or the 40 years of the life of this project. Have you costed that out? Have you given that consideration? It's a prime area for development, and I know, based on the conversation here and living there in that area for 25 years, that we have city wells there, but there's some precautionary steps that can be taken to minimize any, contamination of the groundwater that would be, I think, adhered to by people if they knew what the rules were starting out. So, if you looked at it, 70 acres of half-acre lots, what does that amount to on the tax base for the city? Then also, I would caution all of us not to be pulled into this, and it's, crossing the United States and other parts of the world, these data centers. I mean, we build them, or we build the system to support them. Where are the wealthy people and their contributions that will benefit from these large installations? You know, where does that, when each and every one of us in this room have a burden placed on us to contribute to their, basically their wealth. Now, I know that jobs are created and others benefit, but we're kind of too overly eager many times to satisfy these needs when the appetite is, so you do, you know, whatever the size of this plant is, 5 years from now, they need double that. 5 years from now, they need 4 times the amount. How do we provide for that? How do we sustain that? And I know that, you know, we're looking at ways to stabilize the energy cost here. I'm keenly interested in that, just like many of you, many of the speakers here. They've been here for, well, I've been in the community for 50 years, and I haven't experienced a reduction in energy cost at any one year. So now you could argue, well, maybe the rates wouldn't, you know, increase as fast if we didn't do these projects. But I don't know that we can satisfy the needs of the data centers, you know, in these kinds of small projects like this. So I do commend the thinking, the planning, although there's a few little hiccups along the way, but these are things that we have to do and balance again to the citizen and community needs. So thank you much.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, it's Diane and Bob O'Connor from 2220 Lovewood Drive. We live in the buffer zone, and we wouldn't have known anything about it, of course, if we hadn't gotten a letter, so thank you at least for that. But we've had quite a few conversations with neighbors, both in our neighborhood, the Lovewood Drive area, down 2 Mile, and in the Ridgeway area in Whitrock, and there's a lot of concern. One of the things, I saw the big red line going up because of the data centers, and I want to know how many data centers are planned for us right now in our area? None.
No.
So what happens with all this power that's for data centers? Does it get transferred to someone else? Sold to someone else?
Okay. Do you?
So we get approached by data centers on a regular basis, and we've been trying to outweigh, again, the community. Do we want them or don't we want them? And it keeps coming into conversations. But to have a data center, you have to have transmission lines from the outside bringing the power in, again, because we don't generate it. So if you even want to consider a data center, you have to have studies done, and those studies usually take about a year.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, everybody's getting pushed away that is asking, can we build a data center in Wisconsin Rapids for that reason?
Mm-hmm.
When we cross that bridge where if the American Transmission Company says, yeah, you could, then it's going to fall again on the city council to say, do we want this or don't we want this? And my opinion is we don't want this. But the reality is these data centers are coming in the United States. And as I showed in that slide and on that line, even if you wanted to only build solar or wind, you could never build enough generation to support that load growth. And so you've probably seen in the news a lot of talk about nuclear and how everybody's revisiting nuclear because that is the only solution that they currently have technology-wise to handle that growth. And everybody in the United States is ultimately the ones that have to pay for all that infrastructure being built, whether that data center is right in your community or not right in your community, it ultimately gets shared. And I think John mentioned you see that on the East Coast where they've been building a lot of the data centers, their rates are doubling. And on the west coast, you've probably seen where they have what are called brownouts, where they don't generate enough electricity at certain times of the day when the load is greater than what they can generate. And so what happens is people are actually losing power in certain areas as they try to mitigate, the demand.
So does that help us?
So what's where
Does
I'm,
it keep us from a brownout?
so this will help in that course. We won't, because the power generated locally is going to be used locally. Now we're not buying as much power, so there isn't as much generation needed because we're generating some of it right here in our local community. So does that help kind of explain that?
Do you have another one on that?
Yeah, I mean, so it seems like we're doing this project to really mitigate this great increase due to data centers, which we have none right now. And there's a very good possibility that we will never have one because we don't have the capacity to generate that kind of energy.
Yeah, that's
So-
they're very good. But the key here is that we don't generate any electricity ourselves, so we have to buy it on the market, and that market price is going to start going way up because of data centers.
Okay, so the other question we had was the energy that's produced by this array, how is it transferred from the array to,
Anywhere.
yeah, waterworks?
Is
and
that
that?
underground?
So electricity that's generated is immediately consumed. That's how it works. The only time you're storing energy is if you have battery storage, which
Right.
we don't have.
Right.
So all this energy that's being made at this array, 5 megawatts, is going directly to the homes and the businesses right in that area, and it's going on the existing power lines that are there that Water and Light has.
Okay.
So there's no cable or anything above ground that's going anyplace else?
There's nothing new going in that isn't existing already, except a small run of cable from the existing power line on 2 Mile going underground into the array itself.
Okay.
The other question was property values, and you had mentioned that some go up, some go down, which is, that's not much of an answer for somebody who lives within a half a block of this array. So that is another reason I'm not in favor of this. And the other thing is, again, I guess the data centers, it seems like we're doing a big favor, although you're saying that even though we don't have a data center, we're going to share the cost of national data centers, and so it's still going to impact us. So,
And what about, are there other communities in Wisconsin who have been doing this for over 10 years, over 20 years? Do we know what the studies have been, the impact on the communities?
The first projects in Wisconsin were installed in 2017. We installed our first one in 2018. So the technology really has not been at a cost-effective place for 10 years. It's been, shorter amount of time than that where we can compete with wholesale rates. I would say that I totally get the concern about property values. I don't want to send the impression that I think this is all hunky-dory. I think the majority of time anybody's going to be concerned about one of these coming in because they've not experienced living near one, just because there aren't many around and it's hard to necessarily go see one. But I've worked with a lot of neighbors through the process of permitting, and then they retain, keep my cell number after the project's installed. Well, it's being installed, after it's installed, many years after it's installed. And I would say the majority of times, even people that had significant concerns and were within 100 feet of the fence, once it goes in, they have been pleasantly surprised by the type of neighbor that it is. It does not make noise. It does not create traffic. It does not cause any draw on public utilities. And especially in situations like this where it provides some benefit to the local ratepayers, I think people start to feel kind of proud of the sites. And then, especially some of the one in Rhinelander, there's 30 homes within a pretty short radius of that site. It's a similar, well, it's bigger, it's 45 acres, but I get pictures from people of the great blue herons that are flying into the site and foxes going in and out of the fence on game cams, because a lot of guys hunt the perimeter with bow, and they have their game cams, and they see bobcats going in and out and other small mammals. So I understand the perception that these are industrial facilities, and that it's easy to be afraid of the unknown or what you've lived near, but just from my experience in working through this with a lot of neighbors, I really do believe that these can be very positive neighbors.
So the impact on, you're saying, of course, energy bills will never go down, but an array of this size that has been in a community, it has, so are you saying it has had no impact on utility bills? Or it just makes them go up less?
They go up less.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there a number tied to that for an array of this size?
Yep. So the direct number tied to that is when we're purchasing power each year, Water and Light is going to save $200,000 in the purchasing cost. That's the direct, savings right to just Water and Light. But then you have to look at the next set of the picture, and that is Great Lakes Utilities, which we are the member of. They are purchasing the power from One Energy. That's where we get into the advantage of this set contract that's a locked-in price for 30 years. It's kind of like a mortgage for your house, and you lock into an interest rate. That's what you're doing here, is you're locking in on that price with the anticipation that the price or the interest rate is going to go up. And that's where you're getting additional savings through Great Lakes Utilities, because that's who we're having buy all our power as that group of 13 municipalities.
So this seems extremely convoluted, and it would be extremely difficult for anybody to measure what the real impact is for each one of us in Wisconsin Rapids or that uses Wisconsin or Water and Light. There's so many hands in the pie that to really figure out what's happening and whether it's advantageous or disadvantageous is extremely difficult.
I just want to thank everybody for doing your due diligence and really studying it. I mean, we're for progress. But when it hits your neighborhood and you see in a real residential area the impact that it's going to make, I think that's something to really weigh out. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Rachel Frizzell. I live at 2510 Lovewood Drive within the buffer zone. I came into this hearing with a very anti-project approach. Just want to say that, but also with an open mind to listen. I appreciate One Energy's thoughtful design. I know some people said they thought the 150-foot buffer was like nothing, but I think that's significant and makes a big difference to how I would perceive it visually and perhaps property value impact as a person in that area. I guess it is a complicated question and project, and with a lot of factors to consider. And I think as residents, we have our concerns and we want to make sure they're heard. At the same time, I feel like, I would want to acknowledge that we are not the experts on solar energy and installation. And just to the question of, should WWLC themselves put in a solar array? I understand where that's coming from, but to me, that doesn't make sense. WWLC is not expert. We're not experienced in putting in solar arrays. We'd be figuring everything out from the ground up. One Energy is a local Wisconsin company with a track record of success, and they've, some thoughtful design elements with the buffer and the pollinator plantings and the not putting in concrete footings. I think those are all pluses. Just a couple other kind of reactions, I guess, to what I've heard. Costs aren't going to go down. Our costs haven't gone down. Cost of nothing goes down. As we live decade after decade, we all know that everything gets more expensive all the time. It's not going to make our bills go away, but the forward thinking is something we really need. And I don't understand the real estate development counterpoint as opposed to doing the solar, because that's going to take all the trees out also. So I think there's a lot of things to consider, and I don't have, one clear point of view, but I just wanted to make those comments and appreciate the thoughtful design and the expertise going into it. And I'm really glad there was such a crowd of people here today too, caring about the issue as local residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
If I didn't talk, I feel like I'm letting myself down. So I live at 2540 Grand, where do we live, Kelly? 2540 Lovewood Drive. Yeah. As an American, right, you get a vote, so I don't live in I don't live in Rapids, I live in Grand Rapids. James Highfield. I'm not an economist. My neighbors bug me about coming today. If you locked in the value of my home right now at whatever it is, so that it wouldn't affect my decision, I would say it's not logical to go ahead with this. It doesn't make sense. We need something bigger. I know it's a start, but it's kind of like putting a screen door in a submarine, quite honestly. 5 gigawatts to 30, where we need 60, doesn't make sense. So I'm just saying, I think there's a good idea behind this. There's good intent. And data drives decisions. And I don't know that all the data points are in the right trajectory at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope I'm speaking for most of you. This whole thing came out of left field. My name is Cindy Zano. I live on 2 Mile Avenue.
Excuse me, ma'am.
My name
Yeah,
is Cindy Zano. I live on 2 Mile Avenue.
Thank you.
This came out of left field. All of a sudden, we find out in our residential area that we're going to have these solar panels. I don't think any of us have anything against solar energy. Am I right? Right. I think we should have been brought in a lot earlier. I like the idea that you did talk about other areas that were being considered, but I don't feel like we have enough information. I mean, this is residential, and it's completely surrounded basically by Grand Rapids. That's what we're upset about. We don't like the location. And if the other locations, if there's something we could do to help figure out, like you said, over in the industrial park, Consolidated, over by the dump. I mean, there's a lot of places that don't have as much residential. And I think that's what a lot of us that are here are upset about. I understand what you're trying to do, and I applaud that. I just don't like the location.
Thank you. Anyone else? If you could state your name and address, I'd appreciate it.
I'm Matt Heidemann, 2320 Lovewood Drive. I'm also a former employee of the city of Wisconsin Rapids. I'm against this project. I know we talked earlier about landfills not being the ideal spot to put these, but with today's engineering technology, the initial cost might be higher, but we should be looking hard at putting these type of projects on landfills. They'll never be able to be used for anything else in their entire lifetime. Instead, we're gobbling up nice land that has multiple uses, and it just makes more sense to me to spend more money initially and put these in areas like a landfill. A lot of acreage here in town. I know it's not, it's privately owned, but we got to start thinking outside the box and collaborating with private industry in these types of cases. It just makes sense. The other thing that kind of caught my ear was, Todd, what kind of equipment is going to be on that site other than just the panels? Is there going to be transfer switches, transformers?
So you kind of saw the pictures in the One Energy show. There's going to be a couple of transformers on skids, and then you're going to have the inverters, and then the solar panels. So that's the, equipment needed.
Okay. Well, then I really question the site that they're silent, because in my 13 years, I've never been around a transformer, a transfer switch, or any of that kind of equipment that does not make noise. And at low frequency hum is annoying.
Yeah, the transformers are located in the middle of the project with the inverters. Both of them do produce noise, but it's inaudible at the project fence line. So we do noise modeling, and it drops to about 35 decibels at the fence line. And by the time you're, 100 feet outside the fence line, it's down to like 20 decibels.
That's not silent.
Which, well, you can't, when you go out to our sites, you can't hear the transformers, even when you're 100 feet over the grasshoppers or like the rustling corn. It's very hard to actually perceive the noise from them, even when you're inside the plant, much less at the fence line.
Just heading in another direction quick for Todd. When Northern Steel Castings went down, weren't they the largest consumer of power in Wisconsin Rapids other than the mill?
So Ocean Spray is one of our largest customers. Northern Steel Casting was also one of our largest customers.
Do you have any idea what the power difference was once they went out?
So by gaining Metalco, we equaled out with Northern Steel.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, living in the neighborhood, and one thing that there's little signs that say don't park on that property with your car because it's a water source. But yet we're going to put solar panels, transformers up there. I'd love to see the MSD sheets from all that equipment that's going to go in there and see what is involved with there as far as toxins go and all the equipment that's going to be installed before I would ever consider voting yes on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Dave and Joanne, and we live at 2111 2 Mile. And when I open my door in my front and through my picture window and stuff, I see the water tower where the station's going to be. I am the closest house to 2 Mile to that property. So that when he was saying at 100 feet from that fence, it's 20 decibels, I'm probably 43 feet plus the road away from that property. So it's like 63 feet. When I bought the house, Joy and I bought this house about 8 years ago. We're both getting close to retirement age at that time. And we were looking at being close to town, but still having, wildlife. And I have 8 trail cams, and on any given time, 4 of them are going. I have video of black bear in my front yard and my backyard, lots of fox, hundreds and hundreds of turkeys, hundreds of deer. On my way when I left to come here today, first time I saw all 4 of the white deer, the buck and the doe and the two Fawns right on the corner of 20th. There's a creek that goes right through there. I don't know how this might affect them. I've got video of 55 does walking through my backyard, one right after another, just like follow the leader. I see the video. I came unprepared for this. I have figured out that there's way more questions after being here that are not answered because everybody here has ideas. They all have good ideas. They all have, you know, things that everybody else doesn't think about. But I'm the closest house. There's two houses across the street from the water tower on Whitrock, on the golf course area property, that are probably almost as close as me, but not really that close. So I saw the video where they said, if, you know, this is how much the power is going to go up, this is how much it is now, here's how much it will probably not go up when we build this. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, okay, what is the graph? There's two more graphs you could see. One is, what if you don't build it? What will it go up to? And what if, instead of giving the power company, the power company, Great Lakes, their return on equity of a pretty good sizable percentage usually, and we keep that money here, what would that graph look like if that didn't get built like that? And then there's, I'm going to quit right now, but I mean, there's like, I could talk for a long time because everybody's got questions, and I learned so much so quickly. So I'd like to know, is there a place where you can get the minutes of this meeting or something like that, so people like me can review all the questions that people had right from the very beginning?
Yeah, this will all be on our website, and you can actually watch the meeting over again on YouTube and our.
Okay, I really appreciate that. Thanks a
You're
lot.
welcome. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Oh.
I'm sorry. So I just wanted to ask, so Marshfield is building 4 of these plants. Are they going to get 800,000 in benefit for theirs?
Correct. So every 5 megawatt location, so like Clintonville is doing this, Shawano is doing this, but Marshfield is doing multiple ones. Every location, they're going to see that $200,000 less money spent, which then will help keep your rates more flat instead of going up.
So that'll be when their utility will be lowering their rates by $800,000 over the course of the 30 years, when we'll just be lowering it by 200,000? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate all the time that you've given to us here. Kyle?
Just want to read a few into the record. Daniel Whelan sent an email in support of the project. I talked to an anonymous individual who is against this, who has a relative within the neighborhood who has health issues and cited concern regarding EMF field, is in support of renewable energy, but does not think it should be near any houses. Again, that individual would like to remain anonymous. Another email from Dale Belrend at 2811 Deer Road, who is not in support of the project and has several concerns. And then lastly, an email from Kerry Fox on Corey Avenue near 2 Mile Avenue and 16th Street, who would like his email to be read into the record. I want to express my strong opposition to the proposed development of a solar plant on the wooded natural habitat located at 2 Mile Avenue. While I fully support the city's efforts to expand renewable energy and reduce our carbon footprint, I believe this particular project site is not an appropriate choice. The area in question is one of the few remaining green wooded spaces that supports local wildlife, protects our watershed, and offers residents a place of natural beauty and peace. Once it is cleared and developed, that habitat and the ecological benefits it provides will be lost forever. There are far more suitable alternatives for solar development that would avoid destroying valuable land. I urge the city to consider using already developed or disturbed properties such as existing parking lots, rooftops, or old mill property. These locations would achieve the same renewable energy goals while preserving our irreplaceable natural environment. I respectfully ask that the city reconsider this site and prioritize sustainable development that aligns with both our clean energy goals and our commitment to protecting local ecosystems. Following through with this project would be the exact opposite of conservation. Thank you for your attention and for listening to the voices of residents who care deeply about balancing progress with preservation, as well as maintaining the natural environment around us. Governments are put in place to serve the constituents in its community, not corporations. Sincerely, Kerry Fox, again, Corey Avenue near 2 Mile Avenue and 16th Street. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to let everybody know. So the meeting tomorrow is the Finance and Property Committee meeting. This conversation will be happening in closed session because it has to do with negotiating contracts, which that's when we get to talk about, One Energy and everything that's going on. We'll be talking about the contract in more detail to get that information, but we do have to do it in a closed session so that we have the ability to figure out where we're going and what's happening after that. And we close in closed session, but that information will be brought forward to the council, and once they kind of figure out which way they're going forward, it'll be brought out in the public. So again, thank you for being a part of the process. This is part of the process, getting the paperwork out there, letting the neighbors talk to each other, getting people here, let the people that have been elected and appointed to these positions to do their job and deliberate and come to a good conscientious decision. So thank you again for being here tonight.
Can I clarify, is the city council meeting then on Tuesday the 16th at 6 p.m.? That's the third Tuesday? Thank you.
Anyone? Yes? Okay. All right. So we have to continue on with the meeting now. So at this point, go ahead.
I was just going to note, Sue, are you still in the?
Yeah, Sue's here.
I think we might still need action or we still need to hold technically the second public hearing
Oh.
for the conditional use permit.
Yeah, if
Unless,
anybody,
Sue has a different feeling on the matter as the city attorney.
well, okay, we'll still open it up. Yeah. Okay, for this one, we need to close number 2 right now, right?
Correct.
All right, so at this point, we're directing the commission to not take any action on this, correct? Do I need a motion to do that?
I think that would be preferred if there's a postponement.
Okay. So I'm entertaining, or I'm making a motion to not take any action on this until we get more information from the Finance and Property Committee and the council as a whole. And then we'll talk about this next month in January. I got a motion by Zacher, second by Austin. Take it to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Eric, you still with us? Ayes have it, 5-0. Item 3, public hearing and action on a request from the City of Wisconsin Rapids Waterworks and Lighting Commission for the conditional use permit to construct a solar power plant on 2211 Whit Rock Avenue, parcel ID 3414515 and 2520 2 Mile Avenue, parcel ID 3414520. I think we've gone through every possible thing that we need to talk about. Is there any questions before I open it up for the public hearing? Is there any questions from commission, council? Okay. Actually, I closed the last meeting at 6:45, and I'm opening this public hearing at 6:47. So anyone from the public wishing to speak for or against the same issue that we just finished talking about? For a second time, anybody wishing to speak for or against this issue? If you do want to say something, now's your time. For the third time, anyone? All right, appreciate it. So we'll close the public hearing at 6:48 p.m. And I will make another motion to not take any action on this until we get more information from the committee and the council and take this up again in January.
I'll second it.
I got a motion by Zacher, second by Marutz. Put it to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it 5-0. No, I think we're good. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate all your patience in that conversation. Item 4, sign exception request from Graphic House, Inc. to replace the cabinet of a non-conforming freestanding sign for Kerber Rose at 2441 8th Street South, parcel ID 3412617.
Thank you, Mayor.
Elizabeth?
This is a non-conforming freestanding sign. It's non-conforming for the front yard setback requirement and the maximum height requirement. It's similar to other freestanding signs along 8th Street South, many of which are located in that front yard setback or exceed the current height and or site size standards, therefore are also non-conforming. However, one goal of the city's sign code is to bring non-conforming signs such as this into conformity and improve the 8th Street South aesthetic. Sign exceptions are made when signs are unique, site difficulties are present, the sign would encroach into parking areas, the sign is required elsewhere by code, or when the code is unclear or contradictory. So this request in particular is for removing the existing sign cabinets in between the pylon sign support poles to replace with one cabinet. And this would not be allowed under the sign code because it's considered reconfiguring the non-conforming sign. So you can see on the left, that's a rendering of what the new sign would look like if the exception was approved. The applicant claims that due to the property's layout and spatial limitations, there are no viable alternative locations for sign placement, and any relocation would either eliminate essential parking spaces, impede driveway functionality, or significantly reduce visibility from the main roadway, thereby diminishing the sign's effectiveness and creating potential access issues. However, staff have determined that none of the sign exception criteria has been met, and staff believe it would be possible to bring the sign into conformity or replace it with a sign that meets code requirements. For example, a single pole sign at the same location could be erected outside of the 5-foot setback. There's just a aerial photo of the site. So based on that review and the findings, we are recommending denial. However, if the sign exception is approved, we have a few conditions that we are recommending. And I believe the applicant may still be on Zoom, if you have questions.
Working on that.
Oh, okay.
Yep, can hear you.
Okay, perfect. That's good. Okay, perfect. So, staff just summarized the request applicants on, so if you want to ask them to turn or add anything, feel free.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We just went through it, Elizabeth, what you're asking for, and we just wanted you Are you still there?
Were you looking for Elizabeth?
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the planning committee, and or planning commission, and we just went through with Elizabeth what it is that you guys are seeking to do at your business location. So at this point in time, we open the floor to you guys if you'd like to share your thoughts with us.
Okay, I'm sorry, is this regarding the Kerber Rose signage?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. My name is Lee, I apologize, I was confused. Thank you for letting me speak. So what we are proposing for the Kerber Rose signage is keeping the sign structure intact, keeping the Motel 6 on the top, and removing the 2 cabinets inside of that sign, and just putting 1 new cabinet inside of that sign with updated lighting that still takes over the same amount of square footage as what was there, and filling it with Kerber Rose to give them better visibility for their new business going in there.
Okay. Commission, any questions?
I'll start it off. I understand the necessity for conformity, and I sympathize with it. But when we have new businesses, as this is going to be a new business in this location, if I understand it correctly, right? Moving in, that have to utilize existing infrastructure, or in this case, signage. I don't think it's something that is necessarily known when somebody purchases those properties, that if they change the cabinet or the structure of this sign, that it would be non-conforming, and therefore, may not be permitted, and may cause them to have to potentially remove the structure and rebuild something else. And I think that's a hardship that is just, if it's known, that's one thing, but in a lot of cases it's not. And to me, it's something that I sympathize with folks that think they can update their sign, in this case, make it look, in my opinion, much better than it currently does. And that's going to be denied. So, in my opinion, the main structure of this sign is going to be in place. It's the interior cabinets that are going to be renovated. It's a very, very minimal type of reconstruction of the sign, and I would be okay with allowing this sign exception. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I agree with what he said, and I'll make a motion to approve the request of 25-1570 with the modifications outlined in the review.
And I'll second.
All right, I get a motion by Davin, seconded by Austin. Any further questions or comments? Do we want to hear, if they to approve it, do we want to hear the conditions?
Do you want me to read the conditions on
Yep.
on the screen?
Yeah, it's hard to read.
Okay. If approved, staff recommend the following conditions. 1, the sign shall comply with all other provisions specified in Chapter 46 signs. 2, the sign shall be installed in accordance with the submitted design.
Okay, so did you, we could alter the motion to include these 2 conditions if we want to?
Yep, if both Eric and Ryan are agreeable to that, yes.
So Eric, did you hear the conditions that are being asked by staff?
Yep, I didn't see those. I would be fine with adding those.
Okay, and Ryan?
I'm
you'll-
good with amending, yes.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor and a second to allow the sign with the conditions recommended by staff. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, take it to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, 6-0.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too.
He made the motion, therefore I assumed it was, yeah, so 6-0. Item 5, sign exception request from Kevin Fiera to install a electronic message display on a non-conforming freestanding sign at 4231 8th Street South, parcel ID 3414238.
So this is another non-conforming sign. This one in particular is non-conforming for the maximum height requirement. This request is to install an electronic message display on the sign in an existing cabinet. And Chapter 46 signs prohibits a non-conforming sign from having an electronic message display, even though it may otherwise be permitted. So the applicant submitted a couple of options. This is their first option, I believe. This is the preferred, which shows just the electronic message display on that top cabinet. The height of the sign would be 22 feet and 9 inches. The second option is essentially just the same, except moving down one of the cabinets so that the sign is 21 feet and 10 inches tall. And then this is the third option, which is putting on that electronic message display and bringing the overall height down to 20 feet. The applicant states that moving the sign down to 20 feet will block about a foot of the LED sign and all of the bottom sign from view when parked at the stoplight traveling north, and will block all of the lower sign. At the existing height, the advanced wound care sign and top sign are not blocked. So the applicant is citing site difficulties as the reason for this exception request. However, staff have determined that none of the sign exception criteria apply, as the sign is visible from the roadway, and staff believe it would be possible to bring the sign into conformity or replace it with a sign that meets the code requirements. It should be noted that a non-conforming sign cabinet is permitted to be replaced as businesses change. Just an aerial view. With that, we are recommending denial. However, if approved, staff recommend the following conditions. 1, the sign shall comply with all other provisions specified in Chapter 46 signs. And 2, the height of the freestanding sign shall not be increased. And I'm not sure if the applicant is here? Yes. Okay.
You want to come forward if you would? And
I'm Mike from Rapid Signs.
And I'm Kevin Ferreira.
So we're requesting the variance just because of the cost prohibitive of it too. I mean, it's $9,000 and $9,300 just to replace that top cabinet. There is another option to make a frame that fits on the existing structure. So you're not moving the cabinet, you're basically just putting a frame on the structure. But still, again, you're at 22 feet 9 inches. To bring it down, you start getting about $12,000. To get it down into compliance, you're about $23,000 because of the cost of the sign, and all the cabinets have to be removed and redone to be able to get those businesses back on there. Because the way the poles are set, there's 8 feet in between the thinner poles that are up about 7 feet. Below that, it's less than 8 feet. The cabinet can be slid down to fit in between those poles. So you're going to have to add or redo all the cabinets to make a new cabinet sign, make it smaller to be able to move that top sign down 3 feet. The main reason is the cost prohibitive. And that doesn't even include what he's paying for the LEDs, and I don't have that cost because he was purchasing that himself. Any other questions or? Yeah, Easy Rides, I mean, if you can see on it, it is blocking the sign at the stoplight. And further away from the stoplight, you really can't see that sign. We can't go lower because the cars are parked there at Easy Rides. So if they have an SUV parked there, to bring those signs down on that other pole, it gets blocked by a vehicle. And then on the other side, is not blocked now, but in the spring and summer, they do have 2 trees that block visibility on it too. So again, if you're bringing it down, the top sign not so much, but the rest of the signs are blocked by visibility.
And again, as this gentleman said, we didn't realize that there were codes and things we had to satisfy before we started to, we embarked on this project. We replaced the current cabinets, the lower cabinets already.
The faces on them.
The faces on them, and yeah. And those would have to be changed too, which you didn't cost then. Yeah.
Well, that was kind of part of the $23,000 addition, so, total.
All right. All right, thank you. Commission, questions, comments?
This may have already been asked, but I'm curious what the current maximum height is. I'm curious if this is going to stand out compared to all the other signs in town, like that it's non-compliant?
What the current structure is?
Yeah.
Is it 22 feet
22
and 9
okay.
inches?
Sorry.
Like 20 feet.
Okay, so,
It's not going to change the look of the structure at all.
okay. But the code in town?
The code is 20 feet
Okay,
maximum.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Kearns?
I just want to clarify with both the applicant, I know we've emailed these to you. I don't know if the Plan Commission and alders present are aware of this, but we do have, within our sign code, we do regulate these pretty heavily. So that first condition that talks about, you shall meet all other code requirements includes, no flashing, no scrolling or transitions. Has to be static for at least 2 seconds, and then there are hours of operation in the B2 district where it has to be turned off by 11 p.m. So those would all apply in this instance.
Yes.
And we would obviously enforce them,
Yeah.
just to make everyone aware that it's not, just essentially displaying what you want. We do regulate these within our sign code, and these standards would be attached to any variance if approved.
And there's no videos, I think. No
Yep.
videos.
No video,
Correct.
no flashing, no scrolling. Yes.
Other commission members? So all we're asking here is a 2-foot variance. No more questions or comments? Commission, what are your wishes?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the sign exception with approved conditions.
I got a motion
I'll second.
by Bailey. I got a second by Maroots to accept this with the conditions put on by the staff. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Go ahead and cast your votes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Eric?
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for investing in our community. Item 6, Community Development Monthly Report. Mr. Kearns.
Hello, this item was requested, both the mayor and a couple of alders. I think it would be beneficial as well for the Plan Commission to get a better understanding of maybe what's going on a monthly basis. You'll recount that we do an annual report every year. I apologize, the last 4 years have been in groups of 2, but we do have the last 5 years worth of kind of economic development, community development summaries on our website. The goal here, though, is to provide a monthly report that summarizes permits issued, economic development, new business, things of that nature, some of which will be just general in nature. As we're working with businesses, a lot of times they don't want to be revealed, and things obviously are asked to be held in confidence. So I've took the privilege to do maybe a larger one this time to play catch-up essentially from January to November to point out a few things. I'm not necessarily going to go through them one by one. I will say that next month's will be much more condensed. It'll just take up November. I'll try to include maybe some December as well, depending on when the packet goes out and the holiday season. So that's why this one is 4 or 5 pages. The goal, though, is that it'll just be 2 pages once a month. We'll provide a summary, somewhat like this in a template format, and then I'll just open it up for questions if anybody wants more information on this background for any of the stuff we've done. With that being said, I'd entertain any questions or comments you have.
I just want to say I appreciate the addition of this report. I think it's valuable to know what our community development is going through on a monthly basis, and it keeps alders and the public aware of the process, much more aware, because it seems to be a bit of a hot topic when it comes to this type of action within the city. So round of applause for adding that. Thank you.
Commission, any other questions or comments? Eric?
I would just add, in regards to this, if there's anything that you'd like to be added to the report, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. If there's anything you want to be displayed differently, let me know. We can certainly change this. If there's upcoming things that you'd want to be on the report, I know other departments have those kind of outstanding requests. We can try to do that as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kearns, for doing this for us. We appreciate it. Item 7, adjourn. I will just say that my record was like a 3-minute meeting. I think this is definitely my record on the other side of things. Adjourning at 7:11 p.m. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you being here.